Hey everyone, welcome to TPUSA Live. I'm John Root, sitting next to you.
Isabel Brown, and we are joining you today to kick off today's live stream, breaking down everything you're going to hear in the next few hours, plus some extra news too.
And of course, we're going to kick it off with Human Events Daily, hosted by Jack Posobiec. He's going to dive into today's news and talk about subjects like President Biden's UN speech.
So important, and I'm so glad he's going to be breaking this down for you because we're not hearing enough about it in traditional media with what's happening at the UN General Assembly.
Also, there's been some protests in Australia, in Melbourne, from construction workers. Jack's going to cover that, as well as Afghan refugees at Fort McCoy facing federal charges for alleged sex acts with minors and spousal abuse.
If you haven't heard about this, definitely make sure you tune in to Human Events Daily today. This is a massive story that really we're not hearing anything about and deserves to be talked about for sure.
And he'll cover so much more, just like in 2020 where the U.S. recorded the largest increase in murders. So a lot going over.
Largest increase in murders. I feel like you glossed over that a little bit, John. This is literally the largest increase in murder our country has ever seen since we started taking records of this nationwide in 1960 that we saw in 2020. It's almost like defunding the police and allowing unchecked rioting nationwide with zero consequences.
You're telling me it's not
doesn't work? I don't know. Just a thought. Maybe that's just me.
And then right after that, I will be on the couch with our guests talking about some great stuff. And we have some amazing guests like host of In Focus on OANN, Stephanie Hamill. We also got TPUSA Ambassador Anthony Watson joining us again for a second day, TPUSA contributor and host of Reloaded, Paige Rue. And we also have founder of the Universal Cheerleading Association and Varsity Spirit, Jeff Webb.
Is today's Jeff's first time on the couch with you?
First time.
Jeff is awesome. You guys are definitely going to want to tune into that second hour. They're going to be covering all sorts of crazy stories, including our Vice President Kamala Harris maybe foreshadowing the world's next pandemic.
If you didn't see that on Instagram, she gave an address on her social media channel, and it was kind of eerie, to be completely honest.
It was really bizarre at the very least. So you guys are going to break that down. Jeff is going to join you guys virtually to talk about woke corporate culture and what's happening in corporate America with very extreme leftist ideology right now, and a Britney Spears documentary coming to Netflix and more.
And right after that, we got Benny on the Block, hosted by Benny Johnson. He's going to be going to Yuma, Arizona to cover the border crisis, and that's stuff that we need to hear right now, especially with what's going on in Del Rio, Texas.
Honestly, I think we should just rename Benny on the Block to be Benny on the Border, and we should just go down there every day because nobody else is covering it. That's just my opinion.
I like that. We need to change that today, Benny on the Border. And then right after Benny on the Block, you got Real America, hosted by Graham Allen. He'll be covering military vaccine mandates, how our commander-in-chief avoided questions while meeting with UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and so much more.
We will also have a special episode for you today of Debate Night with Charlie Kirk. He's taking on Rashad Ritchie from the Young Turks, talking about whether or not kids should be masked in schools. You definitely don't want to miss that. And that's really missing from the media space right now, an actual intellectual debate between a conservative and a leftist. I think it's going to be really important.
And after that, you got Politics, hosted by Alex Clark. Spicy.
Spicy always, the worm culture over there.
But she's going to be covering Uma Thurman's from Kill Bill and Pulp Fiction. She shared her deepest, darkest secret.
She's also sharing some Halloween costume ideas. I'm not sure if they're all related to worms or not. I wouldn't be surprised if that's Alex Clark, but I'm sure there's going to be lots of fun ideas in there for you.
And a little teaser going back to the show we have here on the couch talking to our guests. We're going to be covering a Halloween costume that's inspired by a politician.
Oh boy.
Ooh,
excited to see that. Before we jump into everything else in the live stream, we want to talk to you guys a little bit about COVID today. We recently found out that there's been no COVID outbreaks amidst college football games coming back to the stage. Fauci once said that COVID was going to feast on college game day and football fans while on MSNBC with Joy Reid, but cases are actually down across the board. 44% in Florida, 43% in Tennessee, down in Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, Texas. Every SEC state is down in COVID cases. Crazy. Absolutely beyond insane, right? I mean, you'd think that with all of these football fans returning to stadiums and all being jam-packed together, if this was really still the problem Dr. Fauci wanted us to believe it was, it'd be a little bit of a different situation.
And also, Project Veritas is exposing COVID vaccines. So they came out with part 2 last night. And if you want a comprehensive breakdown of that, make sure you go to the Charlie Kirk podcast, and he'll break all that stuff down.
Yeah, everything from we should be more like Nazi Germany to what you really don't know about these COVID vaccines that you need to be knowing.
Yeah, it's going to be a great breakdown. I know for part 1, he actually brought in the federal employee that exposed what's going on in her federal facility. And then don't forget, too, the show where we are sitting down with guests on the couch. That has a brand new time. That is 2:30 Pacific Standard Time, 5:30 Eastern Time. I'm really looking forward to a great show today.
It's going to be a great day, so excited to break it all down with you coming up next on TPUSA Live.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. I'm wearing my wonderful Fauci-lied shirt, which you can get at bringammo.com. Today's top stories: Biden's secret United Nations speech. Next, the orange vest protests are breaking out in Australia as police crack down. Third, Afghan refugees are facing federal charges at Fort McCoy for alleged sex acts with a minor and spousal abuse. And then fourth, homicides rose by 30% in 2020, the largest increase in murders since national records began in 1960. All of this and more ahead. Human Events Daily. Joe Biden this week went before the United Nations and gave an address to the entire world. Did you know this? Did anyone know this? How did this happen? Because it's so strange. I haven't seen it in the news cycle. I haven't seen it covered anywhere. I haven't seen clips of it going viral. I found a clip of it and I made it go viral because that's what I do. And that's the power of you. That's the power of this audience. That's the power of the Human Events Daily audience. And so that's why I wanted to share it with you. And I want you to make sure that you take this clip. And what we've done, and the folks at Real America's Voice, they took Biden's speech and made, sort of a montage, a summarized version of it, if you will, and put it out because for some reason, no one is covering this speech. So take this clip, share it with all your normie friends, get it out there because it's so sad that Joe Biden is going to give a speech to the United Nations and everyone was listening. Joe Biden, I am here to be your PR guy. Let's take a listen.
We meet this year in a moment of intermingled with great pain. We've lost so much to this devastating pandemic, the emergence of new technologies, and global health and a global health threat council toward global COVID response, the global COVID response, vaccinating the world and building back better from the borderless climate crisis, from the United States and from other donors. Working with countries, technologies that reduce the risk. Similarly, we know the bitter sting of terrorism is real. The United States is committed to using our resources. When the earthquake strikes, we're fighting between warring parties, horrific violence, and a belief in the universe. Whether it occurs LGBTQI, the authoritarianism of the world. Proud Moldovans broke now together. Climactic climate change. From COVID to climate. We, you and I, God bless you all.
That is right. Climactic climate change from COVID to climate. The proud Moldovans. Joe Biden, I am so sorry that the mainstream media is suppressing you, that they're shadow banning you, as a matter of fact. That's what's going on. They are not covering your speech, and so we are going to make sure that everyone hears this speech. That's why I'm asking everybody, if you're watching, particularly if you're on YouTube, you're on Rumble, you're watching there, you can see the video. I really want people to share this segment out so that everyone can see Joe Biden on the world stage. I don't get what it is. Someone is putting their thumb on the scale yet again, not allowing this incredible and wonderful speech to be shared with the world. And that's what we're gonna do here at HE Daily. We are going to be the influence agents, and we are gonna be the hype men. We are gonna be the hype men, the hype women for Joe Biden. We're gonna get this out because you can't stop us and you can't stop the signal. Yeah, there's a reason that, I talk about the shade war that goes on inside the White House. Producers, do you have that clip for me yet? The shade war update? Where's the shade war update? You don't have it. Shade war update. Team K and Team B, right? Team K and Team B. Team Kamala, Team Biden. Do you know what Team Kamala calls Team Biden behind his back? They call him Titanic. And there's a reason. Because he's sinking. And I don't just mean in the polls. Although he is also sinking in the polls, so that's actually part of it. No, what's going on, and you can see it in this video, right? This is a guy who, he seems like he's treading water. He seems like he shouldn't be there. And we've seen the level of incompetence, right? In the previous administration, you would see the media would claim that there were scandals, but there were always media scandals, right? Either taking something out of context, or there was some lie, or there was some clip that they would, put out that would RuPaR it, and so you'd get like one piece of it, but you wouldn't get all of it. That would be the scandal. But Afghanistan was kind of quiet. The border was quiet. The economy was doing well. COVID hit, and that obviously was an issue, but that came from the CCP. That didn't come from Donald Trump. But now we see all these things, and they're all spiraling out of control. Because what have we done? We've taken power away from the people, and we've handed it over to the bureaucrats. We've handed it over to the academics. We've handed it over to the officials, the experts, and we handed it over to people like Fauci. And remember, folks, Fauci lied. And that's why we've got the shirts. Fauci lied. I'm gonna wear this around DC, and maybe I'll document people's reactions to this, because I don't think people are going to like it very much. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Human Head Daily continues. And we're back. Now, this segment, we do have to get a little bit serious, because what's going on in Australia right now is we are seeing the birth, I think, of a police state. We are seeing the creation of a prison island where, I'm on this media tour. I'm talking about this kids book I did we call it The Island of Free Ice Cream, and it's like this communist island where people can't escape from, that's controlled by wolves, and it's anthropomorphic and all that, but the videos and the images that we're getting out of Australia are pretty horrific. And so if you're someone who's not into that stuff, you don't like that stuff, go ahead and skip this segment, just fast forward, go past it. If you're watching live, well, walk out of the room, go to the bathroom, grab a bite to eat or something, because this is not for the faint of heart. Because what's happening in Australia is absolutely horrific. And let me set the tone of this. So what's going on now, and there's people that are starting to call this the orange vest protest. So we had the yellow vest in France, that was the Gilets jaunes, and that was really this sort of populist uprising in France. Now we're seeing a populist worker uprising in Australia. People striking, workers striking, it's a lot of it is construction workers, or as they call them in Australia, tradies, right? Because they're tradesmen. And so the government of Australia shut down, it's been reported, the construction industry for 2 weeks because they wanted to push vaccine mandates for all construction workers. So they were not letting these guys work. And they were saying, you're not allowed to work until you get vaccinated. We're gonna shut you down so you can go do this. What do? They protested. And so they're calling it the Orange Vests protest. But I want you to take a look at the way the Australian government, the Australian police have responded to these protests, which does not look like something that you would expect to see from a democratic country, a country that believes in personal freedom, a country that believes in liberty, or a country that's part of Western society. Take a look.
They're throwing stuff now, and okay, they're shooting. They're now shooting. They're now shooting people. You can hear the, oh my God. They're just shooting at everyone now. The bullets are going flying through the place. And you can still see through here. There are kids here. This is an absolute disgrace to the show and remembrance that they've come here and they're taking it over and causing violence and disruption to peaceful protesters that are here on this property, on this land, because it resembles the Anzacs that fought for our country and our freedoms. And now we're doing the same by trying to fight for our freedoms. They're shooting again! They're going through the trees and everything. All the bullets you can hear, like just flying through the trees, and the whizzing sound of it going through the air. And you can see, absolutely mental.
Now, as you watch this, keep in mind, right? One thing that I've always said for Human Events Daily, and I've always said anywhere where I'm working or I'm talking in interviews, etc., it's your personal choice. Right? I believe in personal freedom. I do believe that that's your personal medical choice, whether you want to get a vaccine or you don't want to get a vaccine. Look into the risks, know the risks. You know, we've got these Veritas videos coming out talking about potential side effects. You've got other people reporting side effects. The VAERS database is what it is. Go look at it, right? But then make your informed decision. That actually is your choice, right? I am pro-choice, right? Pro-life on abortion, because again, that's 2 lives, and that's the issue. But when it comes to yourself and it only affects you, right? That's where I'm pro-choice. The way they're pushing this stuff, the way that they're jamming it down people's throats, forcing you out of your jobs, that is why you are seeing a populist uprising now that's not just happening in the United States, it's not just happening in France, it's not happening in Australia, it's happening across the continent of Europe. You're seeing parts of Asia where this is taking hold. So understand, you've got a massive globalized elite class, the 1% of the world, that is pushing this authoritarianism. And the virus of authoritarianism started with the CCP, along with COVID-19. But the virus of authoritarianism has been around for a lot longer. And COVID-19 became an opportunity. They saw it as an opportunity to take power. And when governments take power, they don't give it back. Australia, keep in mind, by the way, folks, was disarmed years ago. They had a gun ban put in place. And now look what's happening on the streets of Australia when people try to protest. Understand that. Understand that authoritarianism only works when you take away the freedom and the liberty of the people. So, every so once in a while, we get a story in that we need to talk about. It's not a fun story. That's not a good story. But it's also something that's not a surprising story. And that's the situation we find ourselves in now, with a story that I wish we didn't have to talk about, but we do have to talk about it because, ladies and gentlemen, we live in a real world. One thing I say here on HE Daily is that I'm going to give you the breakdown. I'm not going to waste your time, and I don't expect it to be wasted, all right? We're going to break down the story. We're going to give it to you in digestible bits. It's going to go home for you. This is one of those stories. Before I get into this, I want you to listen to something that Jen Psaki said just a few weeks ago regarding the vetting of Afghan migrants coming into the United States. Take a listen.
When the Obama administration was bringing in Syrian refugees, there was a lot of pushback from various states and locales about refugees coming into their communities. How do you see that situation this time around? Is this going to be different, or do you anticipate those same kind of pushback and hard feelings?
We will see. But I will tell you that what we have been working to do is to work closely with governors, with localities, with local leaders to give them detailed briefings on what our vetting process looks like, what the background check process looks like before any individual comes into the United States. And that is a background check process that's thorough before they are allowed to come in and step on U.S. soil. We also know that there are some people in this country, even some in Congress, who may not want to have people from another country come as refugees to the United States. That's a reality. We can't stop or prevent that on our own, but we are going to continue to communicate our intensive vetting process, and we've been working hard to do that behind the scenes, and we're going to continue to convey clearly that this is also part of who we are, part of the fabric of the United States, and not back away from that.
Here at HE Daily, we said we really should be vetting in other countries. We need to be very careful about who we're letting in. We shouldn't just have an open door policy for this situation because we don't know who got on those flights because of the chaotic nature of the Biden administration's surrender and immediate pullout of Afghanistan. Department of Justice. Afghan refugees at Fort McCoy, that's in Wisconsin, face federal charges for alleged sexual acts with a minor and spousal abuse. I'm reading this from Post Millennial. 2 evacuees from Afghanistan will face federal charges for crimes allegedly committed at Fort McCoy. Barula Nori is charged with attempting to engage in a sexual act with a minor through the use of force. The victim was not yet 16 years old, according to the indictment. Next, Mohammed Haroon Imad, 32, charged with assaulting his spouse by strangling and suffocating her. The indictment alleged that the assault occurred on September 7th, 2021. They are now making appearances in Madison, September 16th, and are being detained in Dane County Jail. If convicted, Nori faces a mandatory minimum of 30 years and a maximum of life in prison on the charges alleging use of force and a maximum penalty of 15 years on the other 2 charges. Cases are not related. I don't really know what to say. You said they were extremely vetted. We all knew it was a lie. We knew it was a lie at the time. We told you that this was going to happen. We told you that people were going to slip through the cracks, that people were going to be coming to this country, posing as refugees, posing as people in need, and yet would come to this country and exploit us, exploit our open door policy, exploit our good feelings, exploit our nature in order to come here and now commit acts like this. I don't really know what else to say. Just understand, ladies and gentlemen, that this is what happened in 2015. This is what's happening now. This is what will happen every single time this policy is tried. And the Biden administration knows it. They know it because it's happened again and again and again. Help people in need, but don't be stupid. And that's what you're doing. And you are enabling this type of heinous, destructive, and disgusting, degenerate activity. And it needs to stop. They lied. They completely lied. You know what? We'll be back. Next segment. And we're back. Now, another story that isn't one that I wish that I was reporting. I don't enjoy talking about this kind of thing, but of course we have to. So get out of cities. That's number one. Get out of cities. Just don't be there. You know, and Michael Knowles has that book that he did, you know, with the reasons to vote for a Democrat, and it's all white pages. So I want to do that, but like with get out of cities, right? And then as you read the book, Get Out of Cities, it's just every page says, get out of cities, and then every other page says, just don't be there. Get out of cities, just don't be there. Cities are not the place to be for the next 5 to 10 years. They're going to be in a downward spiral. We're seeing that in the data. We're seeing that from, understand that when you have the attacks on police officers that we've seen since 2020 on, when you have these massive campaigns against the enforcement of the rule of law, what does that do? That enables criminals. We're seeing it now in the data. Homicides rose, dailymail.com, by 30% in 2020. The U.S. recorded the largest increase in murders since national records began in 1960, according to preliminary data from the FBI. The biggest increase prior was 1968 when homicides rose by 12.7%. Of course, gun violence was a contributing factor to the murder surge. Around 77% of 2020's murders were gun-related. This was good. Come on, folks. This was going on during the lockdowns and during the anti-police protests that said we want to defund the police, we don't want the police doing anything, we don't want the rule of law enforced. Then you've got the lockdowns. So when you combine those two, the riots and the police, what happens? The anti-police, you get 30% rise in murder. Think about that, 30%. The previous increase, 12.7. So that's more than double in 1 year. Our cities, our major, and you see this across every major city in the US, they're completely out of control, and people keep voting for these woke DAs who say they want to implement, it's just criminal justice reform, we want to do this. And you've got murderers like Julius Jones and Rodney Reed that Kim Kardashian comes out for and says we need to support them, support the murderers. They didn't really do that. Well, the DNA evidence says they did it. His DNA is found in the bandana in Julius Jones's case, which is wrapped around the murder weapon. In Rodney Reed's case, the DNA is found all over the dead body, right? You don't need, some long-form Netflix series on this. But then Kim Kardashian comes out and says, oh, no, you need to let them go because, this and that and the other thing, and because I'm a celebrity and I'm from Hollywood, right? No, Kim Kardashian is not our justice system. Netflix is not our justice system. The true crime podcast community is not our justice system. Yeah, that's right. I'm calling you out. They get some stuff right, but they don't get it all right. We have a problem in this country, and it's centered on our cities in every major city, every single major city. I live on the East Coast, and I've seen it throughout my lifetime, the decline of our cities in real time. Do not be there. Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles. I know someone who just refused to take a job in Los Angeles because of the issues out there, the street issues, the homelessness, etc., the rampant problems, mental illness, running wild on our streets. That's what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, this can be fixed. This can be fixed by policy. You have the ability, you have the power, you have the capacity to do it. But you have to actually wield it. You have to stand up and say, enough is enough. That's all the time we have today. Be the influence agent. Share this out with your normie friends. Make sure you're subscribing, whether you're on Apple, whether you're on Spotify, if you're watching the video on Rumble and YouTube. I have people say to me, they said, Poso, I didn't realize that there was a video. So yeah, we do the video every day. It's on YouTube and Rumble. Go to the Turning Point Live channel. I think there's a playlist as well. You can find it there. But before we go, today's moment in history, September 23rd, 1779, the battle of the USS Bonhomme Richard, John Paul Jones, the father of the US Navy, against the HMS Serapis, the first great American naval battle and victory in US history. It was that battle that gave the French the confidence to come in and backfill the United States. And of course, where John Paul Jones had his famous comment, his famous quote, "I have not yet begun to fight." Well, I have not yet begun to fight either. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.
If you want to see an example of failed socialism, go to an Indian reservation.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
Muerte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water, we had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates. I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people, even if I have to fight you to save you.
Hey everyone, welcome to TPUSA Live from our headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, John Root. Here's what we're going to be covering today. We'll fill you in on some important news in the daily briefing. Then our guests, including Stephanie Hamill, will tell you all about the new shocking Britney Spears documentary coming soon. Following that, we'll play Law or Nah, where our guests will have to decide if what I'm telling them is a law in our great nation or nah. Make sure you stick around for my chat about corporate wokeness with the founder of Varsity Spirit, Jeff Webb. Finally, our vice president seemed to allude to another pandemic in her address posted online, and you have to see this politician-inspired Halloween costume in one last thing. All right, let's get this thing started. TPUSA Live from HQ starts now.
Authentic, unfiltered, grassroots content and conversation every weekday. Live from Phoenix, Arizona at the Turning Point USA headquarters, this is TPUSA Live.
Well, once again, welcome to TPUSA Live. We have some fantastic guests today. First off, Tuesday might be the best weekly shows there.
Tuesday is the best day. Best day, sports and guns. Love it.
What more could you want? But the host of Reloaded, TPUSA contributor, we got Paige Root here, and then also the host of In Focus and political commentator. And from OAAN, we got Stephanie Hamill. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited
Then
to
we
be
also
here.
got back for day two.
Day
Back-to-back
two,
days
baby.
with Anthony Watson, TPUSA ambassador and Olympian. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So we got to cover some of the daily news in the daily briefing right now. So there's a reboot of The Wonder Years that debuted last night on ABC, and we have to have a conversation about different reboots that we're seeing. We talked yesterday about 007, No Time to Die. There's rumors about a woman maybe taking over as James Bond. And then now you see a reboot of this classic show that's now about an African-American family. And there's similarities, but it basically stops at this. Once again, it takes place in 1968. You got a 12-year-old boy who's got a nerdy friend, and there's a love interest. But it seems like we have to have the conversation of, what if there was a reboot of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? What if there was a reboot of The Cosby Show and it was about a white family? It seems like a lot of what Hollywood's trying to do now is push diversity. Everything's about race, and everything seems to be about gender.
And they're using everything for, we talked about this a little bit earlier, that they're taking the popularity of those shows and then just switching it for a diversifying agenda. And it's so frustrating because I feel like it already is, diverse, and they're adding princesses, or they're adding, all these different diversities. But now you're right, they're taking all of these just normal, shows with white people or Caucasians, and now they're turning it into that. And so I feel like we're just getting washed out.
Yeah, and no doubt this is going to be an important story they're trying to tell, but it seems like you can take another story, another show, and create it about this time and share the story of an African-American family. So Anthony, what do you think about stuff like this when you see a reboot of a classic show like Wonder Years?
Why are you asking me? Because I'm just kidding. I wouldn't, honestly, if they did a reboot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I don't even think I'd be interested. I mean, like, we all love the shows that we grew up with. Like, nobody was making it about, like, skin color back then.
No.
It was all about, like, where it was all about middle-class people still being able to, like, show good qualities of, like, family, togetherness, sacrifice, all the things that, like, television's gotten out of. And that's not the only reboot. That Disney, when they came out with their real-life version of Aladdin, they switched it and they made Jasmine Sultan at the end of that movie. I was so disappointed in that, the one where Will Smith was Genie. So, since we're talking about Fresh Prince, and then recently they came out and they're still in cahoots about it, saying that the new Little Mermaid movie that they're going to make, they might make a black mermaid out of that. And speaking from somebody that grew up in that world, I was like, ain't no black woman worth her salt going to be messing up her weave and her tracks, like even foreshadowed or seen in water. So I mean, I agree with everybody else here. Like, Hollywood is literally trying to, like, reset the stage and entertainment, and it's, like, plummeting and it's not working anymore. So
yeah, I don't really have a problem with it, because if you think about it, Hollywood, they are constantly lecturing us about diversity and all these other things, and then all of a sudden all their writers aren't including diverse people in a lot of their scripts. As for these reboots, I think it's kind of peculiar. I don't know exactly how that's going to work out. I don't think you could reboot Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, how could you do it any better than it has already been done?
Obviously.
I mean, like, who's not watching old episodes of Fresh
Are they
Prince?
just being lazy? And,
no, it'd probably
let's
be like
reuse all
a
that?
white privileged 1% kind of show, family, to fit narratives that way.
I don't know if that if they're being lazy, I think they might just be out of ideas, and then they think that they're like, taking things to the edge, and that's going to get a lot of like good PR for them. I don't have a problem with it. So we'll see how their ratings are, and if their ratings suck, that's their problem.
Well, they've also had shows about white people that were poor. Y'all remember Little House on the Prairie, the Waltons, all those classics? So
we were definitely not alive when those came out.
I was like, I'm way younger than that.
But also, too, speaking of Hollywood, Johnny Depp is taking on cancel culture. So what he had to say is he's a victim of cancel culture and said it's spread across the entire cinema industry. And Depp brought up that his ex-wife, Amber Heard, went public with allegations of domestic violence against him a few years back. And he's saying Hollywood is certainly not what it once was, and that it's so far out of hand, I can assure you no one is safe from cancel culture. So something like this, I think, is this just like a woe is me situation, or is he trying to take on cancel culture for everyone?
I think it's a reality check. Like, I've been canceled because of my conservative beliefs, and I lost all of my Olympic sponsors because of that, but what I tell people is just like, you can't be on the side of evil and it not affect you, because if you think you're fighting a cause by joining them, and like, this is Hollywood. The people that, like, every single time something has been misconstrued, you see it on Extra. People whose lives are literally under a microscope, and anytime they make any type of mistake, it's always like a spotlight story. So this is just a sign that nobody's safe when you're doing it that way.
Yeah, and the final story for you before we let you go. So TPUSA started a scoreboard watch list, and the Los Angeles Unified School District is mandating vaccines for students 12 and older and implementing QR scanning protocols. There's crazy stuff going on, obviously, and we're going to be covering so much throughout this entire live hour of TPUSA Live. But coming up next, our guests are going to be talking about the shocking, brand new Britney Spears documentary coming to Netflix. Paige, Anthony, and Stephanie will be back. See you soon.
United States of America, this great country of ours, we American Indians, we can be anything we want to be, except American Indians.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
What we call muerte. Muerte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good. Just like Nazi concentration camps.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water, we had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates.
I moved from the poorest county in America, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, to the richest area in the country, the Navajo Indian Reservation. There is no difference. The poorest and richest reservations in our nation suffer from identical problems. This is not anything new. This is an everyday occurrence in all tribal governments.
So my life and my tale and my truth has been to fight socialism, and I'm hoping that I can wake up as many Navajos as I can to tell them that you can do this, even if I have to fight you to save you. And I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people. Even though they are so harsh on social media and they completely hammer at me, I tell them, I'll be here even if I have to fight you to save you.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We have Paige Roos, Stephanie Hamill, and Anthony Watson. All right, the Free Britney movement has been taking off on social media, and then now we have a brand new documentary coming to Netflix. It's called Britney vs. Spears. So here's a little background about what's been going on with Britney Spears. Since 2008, Britney Spears' life has been controlled by a conservatorship led by her father, James Spears. Spears claims that her father and others have been in control of her life and career since the start of that conservatorship. They have forced her to work tirelessly, even goes as far as comparing her 7 days a week, no days off schedule to sex trafficking. And she also had a personal conservator, Jody Montgomery, and she alleges that Jody prescribed medication like lithium against her will and told her she was not allowed to get married, have a child, or have her IUD removed. So we're going to show you right now just a clip of that trailer of the new documentary coming to Netflix.
I just want my life back.
Britney's been silenced to speak out about anything that's really going on.
Britney never had one person she could trust. Not mom, not dad.
Britney had a fear that her family would barge in and take everything.
What was going on inside the conservatorship? And why was she still in one if she was, quote, okay?
There was financial incentives for Jamie, for the lawyers.
I've represented dozens of conservatees in court. Not one of them has ever had a job.
Britney made other people a lot of money.
I've worked my whole life. I don't owe these people anything.
And so many people have been following the Free Britney movement. I know me, I'm just like, I didn't really care about Britney Spears too much for a long time, but you hear news like this, and you're like, yeah, I'm Team Britney. I want her to get justice and to find out how she's been taken advantage of over the years, especially since you hear someone like her lawyer, Matthew S. Rosengart, say, these conservators, most of the time, they don't even have a job. They're just taking advantage of people. So what's your take on this, Stephanie?
Yeah, I mean, it's so outrageous that we have somebody who's been living in like kind of modern day slavery. This person has been working. Obviously, she had that really successful Vegas show. She had platinum records, and this is somebody that a lot of us grew up with, watching her music. And we just never thought that somebody so successful like her would be living in this nightmarish life. And so for that to all be exposed, and it saddens me to hear that this is like her family, the people that she trusts, who have been taking advantage of her, obviously. And you're so right, the conservatorship is something that you would never imagine a working woman being under. It's kind of for like the elderly or people who really can't make decisions for themselves. And so, yeah, I'm glad this has been exposed. And, you know, I haven't seen this documentary, obviously, but it'll be interesting to hear more details about it. And we're glad that Britney's free. This is like a uniting moment in this country where we can all kind of get behind this. I think like everyone agrees she should be freed. I will say though, have you guys seen her Instagram lately? It's been going, it's a little bit weird.
I followed her for a little bit, and then I had to unfollow her because sometimes her outfit twist changes and all the different dances and her paint. It's just, it is
borderline
it's a
like
little,
nudity and like really weird,
weird.
sexy dances. But it's her Instagram. She can do what she wants, and you know,
She's about to have adult
some
age
people
children.
like it.
It's just like, I know I'd be horrified if I went on my mom's Instagram. I'm like, Ma!
Well, we see so many people are so engaged with what's going on here with Britney Spears, because this video, just 3 hours after it was posted, over 500,000 views. So
Netflix did it again.
Netflix, always doing it. But with something like this, we see so many stories about child stars and people going through drug addiction and different crazy situations. But now to find out that someone has been so taken advantage of, like, what's your response when you see something like this?
Well, it's like what you said, John, and going with what Stephanie said. It's like, sadly, this isn't the first time this has happened in Hollywood. That's Hollywood. That's the way that they roll. And, you know, sadly, a lot of people are warned about these kinds of things, and it's sad to see, you know, like how far people will take it. So it's like, you know, the drugging where people will literally keep you like unconscious just so that you can keep pushing yourself past your body's limits so that they can keep getting paid. You know, the Jackson 5 went through that with their stepfather, you know, so it ain't the first time that these kind of issues have like, you know, came up as like Hollywood like breakout stories. But for someone as iconic as Britney Spears, who's had a lot of impact on, you know, people my age when I was younger, yes, she had an impact on me. I wanted to be one of her backup dancers, you know, but just hearing like the evil that comes out of Hollywood, you know, it's surprising, but it's not surprising. And, you know, now that the story is being told, it kind of puts everything in perspective when you saw what she was going through from the time she shaved her head, from all the wardrobe malfunctions and all the other times that she wound up in the news. I was just like, oh, now it makes sense. So
Totally. I think those stories need to be shared more because, I mean, I think back to it, I listened to Britney all the time growing up. Like, it was my jam. I had the fake little princess heels on, like singing all the songs, and just realizing what she was going through versus what's on social media and what's portrayed on social media or in the news for all these stars, and then what they're actually going through. It's so sad.
Because we've been talking a little bit about Hollywood here. There's obviously cancel culture, we have reboots of shows, and in this entire entertainment realm, we want justice for Britney. And so when you see something like this, what do you think the aftermath of this documentary and really seems to be bringing America together in a very funny way?
I know. Yeah. There's just so many things that aren't uniting us right now. So this is like a moment where we can all kind of get together and get behind that. But I think it will open up some eyes, and I think we'll probably end up hearing more stories about young Hollywood people being taken advantage of if we haven't heard those stories. And it is really depressing to see kind of the up and down roller coasters of how some of these people live, because the way we see them, we imagine them living these like extremely glamorous lifestyles.
You want to live
Meantime,
that life.
you know, we're finding out that she had like a budget. You know, she's bringing in millions and millions of dollars every single year, but she had like a $2,000 budget or something outrageous. So yeah, I mean, it's really devastating to see what's happened to her, but I'm glad that finally there's some justice.
And she's engaged, right?
Yeah, she's got, massive
Hopefully
rock.
this one will last.
But Anthony, what do you think the aftermath of this is going to be? Are you going to tune in to something like this?
I mean, I'll obviously tune in. You know, I want to stay as relevant and updated as I can. But for something like this, you know, we all have the hope that people will do what's right. You know, that's what we all hope for in America here, is that when you see something wrong, you'll hopefully have people that are brave enough to actually, now that you can't hide the truth anymore. And so that's my hope from all of this, because I mean, like, for someone that realizes now what she's been put through, it's like you don't want anybody to have to go through that. And you know, like, especially in like the entertainment industry, you know, you have a lot of laws that really aren't law yet, and it takes situations like this that now protect artists from future things like that, and future projects and up and comers and other performers and stuff. So that's what I hope comes out of it.
I think that's an important point, because it's not just Britney Spears who's going through something like this. There could be other people in this country who are facing the same type of issues, obviously not at her level. And I remember having a conversation with Congressman Matt Gaetz, and he said that this was something that he was worried about and wanted to make sure that his constituents were taken care of in this regard. And so it was important to spotlight this issue of the conservatorship and make sure that the people who actually need it have one, and those aren't suffering. And luckily for Britney Spears, she has a huge following and people that expose what was going on. But for the voiceless, you want to make sure that you have people to protect them.
And then we always talk about big gov sucks. We want to promote individual rights, and then you hear this story about Britney Spears, someone we grew up listening to, watching, and now this seems like one of those situations where individual rights are under attack. And then we want to see justice for that, because that's the beauty of America, is those individual rights. But also, just like we talked so much about on this show, government's just taking advantage, and we're allowing people to take advantage of us. But now we see somebody that was taken advantage of at such a young age, and where she just couldn't get out of it. So when you think of something like that, here, individual rights are so important.
Honestly, it just hurts my heart that, like, I can't imagine my parents ever doing that to me, or just what she's going through. And what I love about, you know, Turning Point USA Live and all that is, what I see is with this documentary and everything, there needs to be education. There needs to be, okay, what did she go through and how did she get to that point? Or with all of these different scenarios, especially for individual rights, you know, we need to be educated on how did she get to that point, and how can I make sure that I don't repeat history. I feel like that's like the theme of our country right now. Like, let's just not repeat history.
And then final say.
Yeah, I mean, you said big government sucks. It does indeed suck. And so this is kind of an example of that, and these laws that people had been taking advantage of to take advantage of people. And I get that. I understand that there is a purpose for a conservatorship. That is, you do want to protect people. And so her dad's defense was that she only had $2 million left in her bank account. And so he wanted to make sure that she didn't like run through all her money and hit complete and total rock bottom. You know, did he have other nefarious motives? Obviously, it seems like he did, and a lot of people made a profit off of her. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there has to be some sort of balance, but it seems like less government is better.
Only $2 million.
Only $2 million.
I wish I had those problems. Anthony, you only have $2 million left in your account. Start spending wisely. Like, I wish people would do that when I had $200.
But speaking of crazy laws, our next segment, we have the first installment ever on TPUSA Live, law or nah. I'm gonna give you some laws and you're gonna have to tell me whether that is actually written law in our great nation or not. I'm gonna be back with Paige, Anthony, and Stephanie. We'll see you guys in just 3 short minutes.
Lipstick is red, woke faces turn blue, cinnamon rolls are queens, I've got pop culture for you. All the juicy, wormy, newsworthy 411 is coming to you every single day on Politics at its new home, TPUSA Live. It's like Barbie's dream house, but bigger and pinker.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. We're at TPUSA HQ with Paige Rue, got Stephanie Hamill and Anthony Watson. We're going to play Law or Nah. This is going to be a lot of fun. First time we've ever done this on TPUSA Live.
Oh boy.
I'm going to give you a statement, and you're going to have to tell me whether that is written law in our country or not. You ready to rock?
Yeah.
Anthony, you seem a little nervous.
Well, I've never been arrested, so let's go.
Well, I haven't either.
All right, let's check out the first one. Here's the first one for you. In Louisiana, it's illegal to send a surprise pizza. Is that a law or nah? Paige?
Louisiana?
Illegal to send a surprise pizza.
Nah. No.
You're saying that's not a law?
I feel like this is a trick question, so I'm gonna say it is a law,
Okay.
because it just seems so absurd, and that's why you would ask me this question.
It seems kind of nice too to get a surprise
Yeah,
pizza.
I mean that's a solid. Somebody sent me a pizza, I'd eat it.
Well, John, with crime uprising in probably neighborhoods where delivery boys look like myself, it probably became a law to, kind of cut down on crime, so I'm going to go with the law.
You're going with the law.
I'm going
Stephanie
with the
and Anthony
law.
are going with the law. You're going with nah.
nah.
The correct answer is it is a law. It is actually a law in Louisiana. So sending an unprompted pizza is actually considered harassment in Louisiana.
I was about to say my inner criminal was tingling.
So that could actually result in up to a $500 fine. So anyone in Louisiana watching, don't send a surprise pizza because your bill for that pizza might
gonna
be
be heavy. I wonder what the backstory is to that. That's pretty good. What if you send somebody up for like pizza coupons and then they just start like spamming your email over and over? The reason I bring that up because somebody did that to me one time.
Really?
Yeah.
Stephanie, so let's say you're living in Louisiana. You get a surprise pizza. Are you feeling harassed?
No. Well, maybe. I don't know.
Depending on the pizza?
I was thinking of Louisiana.
Like, is it my birthday?
Yeah.
If someone sends a Hawaiian pizza to my house, that is not harassment. That person is my new best friend.
You like Hawaiian pizza?
Oh, yeah.
Don't I look like the guy that likes pineapple on pizza?
Well, I mean, like, you should just have a straight pineapple pizza. Take the ham off.
Ooh.
No.
You haven't lived until you tried that.
But would you really eat a pizza that somebody mysteriously sent to your house unannounced?
Hey, if it's warm, you
I don't have to cook.
I
don't have to go out.
It's
It's there.
I'm cool with that.
But let's move on to the next one here. So next one, law or nah. In Arizona, it's illegal to wear a skirt past 9:45 p.m. on Thursdays. Paige, law or nah?
No, Arizona's cool. I said no. I'm
Nope.
sticking with no.
You're going with nah. Law or nah?
Definitely not a lie. Have you been to like Scottsdale lately?
That's true.
I don't even know if those are considered skirts. Like they're so short. It's like underwear.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say law because in my position, if I was to say, "Hey, Paige, nice skirt," that's 25 to life for a compliment. So, yeah, I'll say law. In my defense, I feel like I'd have to have an attorney to be like, "Yeah, Your Honor, he's not from here. Just said hello. She was wearing a skirt. End of story."
So it's actually not.
Darn.
Law. Come on. I know you haven't been out here in Arizona too much. But you
Yeah.
got to know.
I haven't.
Old Town Scottsdale. or at least
120
Mill Ave,
degrees.
You got to know that people are wearing
Yeah,
skirts.
there are no pants.
But we're moving on to the next one.
No,
Law
just no pants.
or
Why
next
bother?
one, law or not. In Indiana, it's illegal to ride a horse above 10 miles per hour.
Law.
Paige Rue is going with law. Stephanie?
Nah. Not a
Going with
law.
nah? Law or nah, Anthony?
I've said law twice. I'll go nah.
So, you said it really quick. I want to know why.
Because I had this app on my phone for the longest time that it was like crazy state laws, and you would just swipe through and read all the crazy laws, and so it's fun. I feel like I remember this one, but I'm probably wrong.
Well, you remembered correctly because that actually
Whoa,
is a law.
no way.
So no horse shall be driven at a speed
Well, you can't drive a horse.
at a speed above
Ridden.
10 miles per hour in Indiana due to high-speed horse races back in the day.
No way.
But actually, there is no reports about how fast Border Patrol on horseback were going. Trying to figure out the border crisis.
Oh,
I don't know how
yeah.
fast they're allowed. I don't know
Oh.
how fast they're allowed to go. But we know in Indiana you can't go over 10 miles per hour.
What's funny, in Washington, D.C., you can't go more than 10 miles per hour on a scooter. And I would know that because sometimes I would use scooters to get to work.
Just like, oh, I'm
Seriously.
getting dangerously close to 10
Yeah.
miles. Could you imagine?
No,
getting
they
a
used to be
fine for that?
20, and you'd be like flying, and then all of a sudden they changed it, and then they like messed with all the scooters, and now they only got like 10 miles per hour.
That's a bummer.
I know, it's kind of a scam.
Next up, law or nah. In Alabama, it's illegal to drive blindfolded.
Law.
Law or nah?
Probably a law. Yeah.
I don't know why it's.
I'm
only
gonna say
Alabama.
nah, because I mean, like, are there any cases that came out with people driving blindfolded?
I don't think it has to be a law. Like police officers, if they saw you doing that, they could pull you over for like distracted driving, right? Because you're not even really supposed to be eating food while driving or like. Be on
But
your
does
cell phone.
Alabama actually have to write it into law? That's
They
how
might.
ridiculous
That's
it is.
what
It is actually in law.
Oh my gosh.
Because I don't know. I don't know the backstory about like the first person that was driving blindfolded. I don't know why you would do that, but maybe after the crazy 2020 we went through, people were just up to do
Probably
it.
sounds like something that happened at a hillbilly family reunion.
Something
Well,
like
you're
that,
just
right?
like testing your hearing, like
Yeah.
making sure your hearing's on point.
And then another one for you, law or nah. This one is from New York. In New York, it's illegal to drink from a straw in Times Square.
Yes, that's a law.
Anthony, you think it's a law?
That's a law.
Do you know?
I don't think it's not a law.
You live there. Law.
Okay, wait. Let me take that back.
Yep.
A modified straw you can have. You can't have like they don't sell the plastic straws anymore. Remember, they give you those straws that like disintegrate in your mouth, and it's like not even worth having
It's
a straw at this
paper.
point.
Maybe a
I
100%
say law.
organic paper straw. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, it's I don't think.
The only reason I say law is because they don't give you straws in Times Square when you.
I've
So
never
it
done
is
that.
actually not a law. And then we got
Oh.
one last one that we're going to throw out there for you.
Good
Law
Lord.
or nah. In Delaware, you can't sell dog hair. Quickly, law or nah.
Law.
You can't sell dog hair in Delaware. Law or nah.
Sounds like a law.
Nah. No.
It is actually a law in Delaware. You are not allowed to sell dog hair.
Sounds like something Delaware would do.
Because I feel like Delaware, there's not a lot.
Well, I am 1 for 5, so I'm going to jail.
But yeah, that's our first installment of La or Nah. How do you feel like you guys?
I like it.
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
had a whole app. I really
Well, yeah,
did.
because I feel like you were prepared for this already. But thanks for playing La or Nah. Paige, Anthony, Stephanie. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Do you miss the good old days when sports were just about the game? If you want to go back to sports being unifying again, tune in every week where we'll expose and discuss how the left is ruining sports. My name is John Root, and this is Breakaway.
Do you like guns? Do you like ammo? Do you like suppressors? Do you like freedom? Do you love America? Do you like baseball? Do you like rifles? Do you like 9mm? Do you like pistols? Join me, Paige Rue, every week on Reloaded.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We have a great segment for you here. We're talking about woke corporate culture with Jeff Webb. He is the founder of Varsity Spirit. He's also an entrepreneur, and Varsity Spirit is the innovative global leader in cheerleading and dance fashion. He's also a co-publisher and senior news editor at Human Events. Jeff Webb, welcome to TPUSA Live.
Great to be with you, John.
Yeah, it's great having you because I know you just wrote an opinion piece on humanevents.com called Companies Beware, Adopting a Woke Culture Hurts Diversity and Inclusion. Can you explain what the woke corporate culture is?
Yeah, woke culture is it's a top-down approach where companies try to institutionalize a uniform system of thought and behavior and even policy. And it's all centered around identity politics. Globalist ideas, and it's bad. We all kind of know it when we see it, and unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of employees are experiencing really the bad effects of that right now.
Yeah, and it seems like it's taking precedent over an actual skill set. They want to know exactly what your politics are if you're applying for this company, and then if you've even been a part of a company for a while. It seems like politics are so ingrained in corporate culture that they want to know, hey, do you align with this? And it doesn't really matter what your skill set is.
No, you're right. It seems to be the overriding issue or the overriding element in the decision about whether you're hired, if you're promoted, what kind of committees you're put on, what opportunities you're given, and it's just plain wrong. And it's going to eventually not only hurt the people who are affected today, but it will eventually hurt these companies. And that's pretty much what my article was about.
And going off of that too, you said in this article, forcing their employees to make political choices instead of general work condition choices when weighing career decisions. So going off of that, can you elaborate on that statement a little bit more?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, let me give you an example. Maybe it's the best way to do it. I was speaking at a large conference for young people, mostly college people, some that were just out of college a couple of months ago. After I'd finished, I was approached by this young woman, and she asked me to talk, and she explained to me that the situation that she was in, she was very troubled. She had a master's degree. She was working in healthcare, working at a very prominent hospital, and the HR department really had become much more prominent in the company, in the corporate culture there. And she was being forced to participate in all these seminars where she was being told she was privileged and she was mean and all these different kinds of things. And she was being singled out. And she was really like, what do I do? I went to college, got this great degree. I worked for what is considered a very good company. I've gotten tremendous reviews for my entire career. And now I'm really being suppressed and I'm being singled out in my job. What do I do? And it's a tough one, because I finally, we talked for a few minutes and I finally said, you're going to have to find another job, because this is on the rise. It's very difficult as an individual to fight back, and we all have to, but it's very difficult. And it's hard to find companies that are pulling the other direction, but there are a lot of them. Unfortunately, most of them are not the bigger companies, they're smaller companies, but there can still be great opportunities for people who don't want to toe the corporate wokeness line.
Well, it's sad because we're hearing these stories so often too. I know anytime I go to a big TPUSA event, talking to these kids that just got out of college or they're just working on the side and they are involved in politics outside of their work, but now it's so ingrained in everything. And you're saying too, this is maybe just cancel culture hitting the corporate world, correct?
Oh, it's there. It's not just hitting, it's there. And hopefully it's something we'll be able to turn back, but it won't be easy. I mean, again, we've lost our educational institutions, we've got entertainment, we've got media. Now we've got company culture that's where we've had the same experience. But in the long run, let me tell you why I think this is going to be a problem for these companies that do that. They're not going to be as competitive. They're spending all their time on this wokeness and suppressing free political speech. They're allowing it to seep into their company culture and their policies and what happens every day, rather than focusing on how do I make my employees as productive as possible? How do I support them? How do I give them opportunities? How do we focus on doing the right thing for our customers and our employees? Those are the companies that survive and win in the long haul. And where we're going right now, this woke territory, I think it's going to make these companies less than competitive, and it may take care of itself.
And it seems like there's a woke hierarchy too. So you're just talking about these corporate companies that this one company did this, and then we have to go more woke. We have to incorporate more identity politics here. It's like we have to do it bigger and better and more woke. And it seems like that's creating such a divide, not only between just workers at these companies, but just how some of these corporations used to be working together, but now it's just a competition of who can become more woke.
Well, you're right, and more and more of these companies that are headed in this direction are being run by pretty far left HR departments, and they feel like it's their job, their main job is this whole DEI thing, and it makes it difficult. It makes it difficult for the employees. We always encourage, when I was building Varsity Spirit and with my team, in our culture, we always encourage our employees to be involved philanthropically, politically, outside the office, right? And it could be either side. They wanted to be involved and they felt safe that they could express their views, but they didn't bring it to the office. There weren't arguments, there weren't people put down. It was accepted. Now, unfortunately, that's being brought into the office, and the institutionalizing of the woke culture is having a very negative effect on just the atmosphere. And it's hard to build a culture where your own employees, your teammates, are being pitted against each other. And that's exactly what's happened. You need to create a culture where everybody is unified around the customer experience and around making sure that there's opportunity for everybody, no matter what their political persuasion within the company.
And then also too, you started this company as a startup. Now it's a $2 billion plus international entity. And what's been the key to your success? Because it seems like you are staying away from these identity politics and you're building them up in their skill set and making sure. Yeah. Also too, you had some keys to inclusive work environment that I'd love for you to touch on.
Well, I started the company, nearly 40 years ago out of my apartment, and was fortunate to have great young people. I was 24 years old and was fortunate enough to have a lot of young people who believed in what we were trying to do and our concept and how it was important to young people all over America. And so we were able to build a pretty special thing, in my opinion. I left Varsity in December full-time, do some consulting now, but I'm not involved in the company now, but full-time, but was very involved in building it. And again, that culture was built around just what I talked about a few minutes ago, being inclusive, making sure that everybody felt like they had a place, they were going to be supported, they could express themselves, but not at the expense of the other employees.
And at TPUSA, we talk about how we're in a culture war every single day. And it seems like we're in a culture war inside corporations now. So is this something that's repairable? And what is corporations' wokeness and trying to get this stuff out of the corporate culture going to look like in 10 to 15 years?
It's a great question. I think it's reversible. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think young people coming out of college or building their professional lives are going to have to be very careful about, frankly, where they go to work. And because I can tell you that, because I hear it time and time again, it's easy to say, well, I'll just go along. I'm not going to create any waves here. But after a while, they become unhappy, and they feel like they're being repressed, and they don't want to be there. And your job should be a place where you're involved in something that you believe in, where you believe in the leadership, where you believe in the mission, you believe in what you're doing, and you care enough where you want to give your very best, because that's when you really get the most out of your job. So you got to be careful. I think it is reversible. I think the companies that keep going this direction, I'll say it again, taking their eye off the ball of creating a great customer experience and creating opportunities for their employees, they're going to become less competitive. And those companies that create the kind of environment I'm talking about, I think will win in the long term. But make no mistake, it's going to be a long fight.
Well, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. I wish we had more Jeff Webbs, and definitely make sure to say hi to our friend Jack Posobiec over there. And thanks so much for giving us a
We're really proud of Jack. He's doing a great job. And thank you for saying that.
Coming up next on TPUSA Live, we have to talk about Kamala Harris, what she posted on Instagram. Is the next pandemic coming? See you soon.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country's very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for life, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
Conservative students are considered threats to American universities, but they won't stand down any longer. Join me, Isabel Brown, every week as I meet the bold student warriors who are fearlessly fighting to stop their leftist professors and peers from destroying their campuses. This is On the Front Lines with Turning Point USA.
What's up, guys? My name is John Root, and every week I'm breaking down the top stories in sports and bringing you conversations you won't hear anywhere else. It's gonna be a great time. You're unbreakable.
TPUSA Live is about to be spicy. I mean, would you expect anything less? It's me, Alex Clark. Of course it's gonna be spicy. Tune into The Spillover, my brand new podcast. Think of it like the older sister to politics with a lot more conservative.
Big dog status, I'm a big dog, I pull up on the block, eat a big Corvette.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We have Paige Rue, the host of Reloaded. Once again, that is on Tuesdays on TPUSA Live right before Breakaway with me, John Root, and we got Stephanie Hamill and Anthony Watson. Welcome back. So we have to talk about Vice President Kamala Harris. She addressed the nation on her Instagram and was talking about pandemic preparedness. This is what her caption read: "We need to act so that our world will be ready to respond before and not after the next pandemic emerges." Those are very key words there. This pandemic caught us off guard, and it should not have. We have learned the cost of failing to prepare. Here's what she had to say.
We need to act so that our world will be ready to respond before and not after the next pandemic emerges. This pandemic caught us off guard, and it should not have. We have learned the cost of failing to prepare. With every death, we have learned all too much the seriousness of that cost. And it is time then to act. And so the United States joins the call for a new financial intermediary fund at the World Bank, which will help us bring together new resources for pandemic preparedness. And today I am proud to announce that we, the United States, are prepared to contribute at least $250 million to help get this fund started.
So a lot to unpack here. First off, I think we need to get into the, at very least, $250 million. It seems like President Biden's administration continually sees a problem and they just try to throw money at it.
Yeah, well, Democrats have never met a dollar that they didn't want to spend, right? And she's talking about preparedness. It's like, well, we kind of had an idea what could go wrong with gain-of-function research, which is what happened here, and we know that our taxpayer dollars went to pay for gain-of-function research, which is so dangerous. So what could possibly go wrong? Meantime, they're getting ready to prepare for it and want to spend all this money. Like, why don't they go hold China accountable for the China virus? Like, they could maybe do that first. So it's kind of like eerie, and I mean, it's very VP Harris of her to come out with this and like come up with another spending plan. They need to go back, hold China accountable, and then we can figure things out for the future.
Well, it's eerie because we hear the next pandemic. So when I hear that, it just sounds like it's almost like foreshadowing. Like, is there something that she knows that we don't?
Yeah, that she's going to be spending more of our money. Can we just get one thing straight? For anybody that doesn't know, politicians don't punch a clock. They don't clock in, they don't count their hours. I was like, they get paid off of the taxes that we get. So when I hear something like this, we're prepared, that's me. We're prepared to take more from you, Anthony, so that we can have more in this fund. And they've done the same thing repeatedly in three big areas: healthcare, Medicaid, and global warming. The three big areas that have no accountability, no traces of anything. All these funds go up to fighting something that can't be solved. And now we have something like this. And they wanted this to happen because for all those months, they said, we need to do this, and they wanted it to become a problem for former President Trump when he was in office so that they could use that as an excuse to get him out. And when they realized the fight that was on their hands, now they're making every effort that we were trying to initiate people in slowly to now become, and now they're trying to force it on people. So I'm not buying any of it.
And like we talked about, is she trying to distract from, that she's not actually going to the border and addressing that issue? She's like, oh, look at me, I'm doing this positive thing. I'm going to announce that on my Instagram out of everything. And then two, what is that money actually going towards? Why is that $250 million necessary? And is she foreshadowing something?
Yeah, it's definitely a deflection. I mean, she is the border czar. And she hasn't even visited Del Rio, Texas at all. So this is 100% another deflection. You look about the news cycle here. So when we talk about this, I don't want people to forget that she is in charge of the border and she's not talking about it. She's talking about pandemic preparedness, stuff that maybe could happen in the future. Right now, we need you to take care of the border. She's not talking about that, and we're not hearing people talk about the tragedies that happened in Afghanistan and are still happening now. We still have people over there that need to come to the United States, and she shares this kind of stuff on Instagram. I think it's 100% a deflection.
Yeah, again, I don't really have an issue with them trying to prepare for the next pandemic. Okay, that's fine, but we want to see the receipts. We want to know where the money's going. $250 million is a lot of money, but it's small potatoes compared to what we have our politicians normally spending our money on. But that being said, like, how do we actually, it just seems really disingenuous and dishonest when they're not willing to acknowledge how this virus started in the first place. How do you prevent something from starting in the first place if you're not willing to find out how it happened and how to prevent it? So they don't talk about that. And you're right. It's a distraction, total distraction. After the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, we saw Biden's polling numbers tank, and then all of a sudden it was like revenge against the American worker with the vaccine mandates and the workforce. It's going to be a huge a burden for business owners and for the American worker, and that was, again, I think, like punishment and distraction from all of the crises that are going on thanks to the Biden administration.
And also, too, I think constantly they are trying to blame President Trump and his administration. So you hear something like this, it's like, well, this previous administration, they didn't do it well, so we're going to do it well. And they're missing out on the people that really should
there
be.
was no crisis at the border. The economy was high. Everybody was getting paid. You know what you see more than anything out, more than wanted posters, is we're hiring, because they've made people so comfortable just by sitting home and collecting government checks, and by like teaching them that you need to depend on the government, and then taking away the initiative that drives people to actually want to come here to actually make something of themselves. And that's why you have a crisis, because we don't punish crime, we encourage it. And so you have a bunch of people pouring in here being like, I'm not from there, there's a better opportunity there, because I'm seeing it all over the place. These people aren't dumb, they're watching and they see what's happening and they see the result of that. And notice how no one's talking about kids in cages anymore. All that stuff is just like, it's deflection.
Yeah, they're still in the same detention facilities that were, by the way, created during the Obama administration, Obama era. And then conveniently, when President Trump was in office, they were called kids in cages, same facilities. Now they don't even talk about that. So again, it's really infuriating to see how they cover all of this. Obviously, it's a humanitarian crisis, and you're right. Like during the Trump administration, we saw the numbers go down of people trying to attempt to cross the border. We've had some almost 2 million people come through in the past year. That is almost the population of the entire state of Idaho. It's an incredible amount of people. And so we have an administration that's not sending a serious message like, don't come here. We are a nation of laws. We're a sovereign nation. You got to follow the rules.
See you guys soon.
Do you like guns? Do you like ammo? Do you like suppressors? Do you like freedom? Do you love America? Do you like baseball? Do you like rifles? Do you like 9mm? Do you like pistols? Join me, Paige Rue, every week on Reloaded.
We are in a culture war for the future of America, and so far the left has been winning. But I've got good news for you. Conservative students are fighting back. Join me, Isabel Brown, every week as we meet the compelling student activists changing the future of our country. Thanks to Turning Point USA, we are on the front lines.
What's up, guys? My name is John Root, and every week I'm breaking down the top stories in sports and bringing you conversations you won't hear anywhere else. It's gonna be a great time here on Breakable.
ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country is very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for life, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Lipstick is
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. The show's almost over. I can't believe we're almost there. We got one last thing. Paige Rue, Stephanie Hamill, Anthony Watson. So yesterday was the first day of fall. Halloween is right around the corner.
Oh, man.
I like to prepare for Halloween quite a bit.
It's actually one of my favorite holidays. I love dressing up. I love like going all out for costumes for sure.
I know we talked about pandemic preparedness. I have some Halloween preparedness. I'm always trying to make sure that I have a really good costume. But this politically inspired costume is taking over the internet right now, and it is a Senator Bernie Sanders. Once again, I'm asking sexy Halloween costume. Take a look at that. So Bernie looked pretty cold and miserable at the inauguration. And I think Anthony Watson, that's a good little...
That's your next costume. You got it.
You got it down.
I got it. I just need mittens, but I got the leg cross and everything.
I think you got it.
I just conveniently had this, so I was like, oh man, I'm inspired.
But if you actually really want to be like Senator Bernie Sanders, that costume is actually going to cost a grand total of $85. So your wallet might be feeling the burn.
Why is it $85?
I feel like I could make that costume for like $12.
I have it at my house. Put some gloves on. I probably have to like find a mask or something, but.
Yeah.
But if you're actually looking to get that costume, you can go to dollskill.com.
Just a quick plug for Dolls Kill.
Yeah.
If you do get that, all proceeds will be going to Kamala Harris's $250 million fund that will be now going to Vice President Kamala Harris for her, what is it, Pandemic Preparedness Fund?
Yeah.
Going to the World Bank.
Goodness.
What's some of your best Halloween costumes you've ever had?
So Little Mermaid I love Disney. So Little Mermaid is actually one of my favorite, and I dressed up as Ariel, full all handmade costume by one of my friends. It was gorgeous. And this year I want to be Cruella de Vil.
Ooh.
I know.
That movie's actually pretty good too.
I know, I'm gonna do the makeup, the coat, all of it, so we'll see.
Stephanie, what's your best Halloween costume?
I never really had great Halloween costumes. I'm always such a last minute person, so by the time I get to the store, like all the good things are gone. But I will say I was like a black cat for like 8 years straight. And I don't even think I was reusing the thing. I'd like go rebuy it every single year. So I was like, I'm gonna be a cute cat, and it was kind of weird. So maybe I'll be a cat again this year. Thought about the AOC dress where she says tax the rich. I'd come up with something, but that's probably gonna be really overdone this year. So I don't know. Halloween's not my best holiday. I love Christmas. Christmas is great.
Yeah. As we wrap up.
Well, I'm bald, so I don't really have many options outside of George Foreman, Michael Jordan, or Samuel L. Jackson.
You have all the options. Just wig it up.
But my best costume ever only cost me like $2. I had to get a bandana. I went as the bed intruder when I had hair. I had an afro and I walked around going like, well, obviously there's a rapist in the neighborhood. He's climbing in your windows. He's snatching your people up. So, and then I sang the song afterwards.
What was the song?
He's climbing in your windows. He's snatching your people up, trying to,
I think that's probably the best way. That's the best way to wrap it up. Anthony Watson, Stephanie Hamill, Paige Rue. Coming up next, we got Betty on the Block, Real America, and Debate Night, where Charlie takes on Rashard Ritchie from the Young Turks. Also, this show is starting at 2:30 from here on out. Thanks so much for tuning in for TPUSA Live. For Paige, Stephanie, and Anthony, I'm John Root. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Welcome to Debate Night, everybody. My name is Charlie Kirk. Debate is at the core of our constitutional republic. Shared ideas inspire collaboration and innovation. Debate makes way for empathy and wisdom, and it shapes our culture. America is a unique place where allowing the best ideas to win is both a means for progress and the essence of freedom. Threats to debate suffocate the air within churches and classrooms, spoil dinners amongst friends, and give unwarranted failing grades to college students and deprive American institutions of conversation. That is over, starting now on Debate Night. Here, all ideas are welcome and conversation is the point. We'll present two sides of an issue and let both points breathe. This isn't for the sake of winning an argument, but for exercising and thus preserving our right to free speech. America is not debatable, but ideas are. Tonight's debate tackles Fauci virus restrictions and mask mandates in schools, but the conversation can go anywhere. Tonight's special guest is host of the acclaimed show Indisputable on the Young Turks Network, as well as the Rashad Ritchie Morning Show, airing daily on News Talk 1380 WAOK. You may also know our guest from MSNBC, the Fox News Channel, Black News Channel, or BBC America, where he regularly stars as an analyst, providing insights on things that he calls social justice and cultural issues. He is the president of Rolling Out magazine, which reaches over 2 million readers every single month, and his passion for building a better world for America's youth sparked the Rashad Ritchie Foundation, which helps improve the lives of children in at-risk communities. He's a lecturer, a professor, analyst, host, writer, and editor at large. Tonight's guest is a dynamic force, and I'm thrilled to have him here. And he's objectively a very nice person. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rashad Ritchie to Debate. Hey everybody, welcome to Debate Night here at Turning Point USA headquarters. Honored to have with us today Dr. Ritchie, a very well-known radio talk show host in Atlanta, also a college professor, amongst many other things I'm sure I'm forgetting. And today we're going to be talking about COVID mandates, schools, masks, and so much more. The way that this conversation will go is Dr. Ritchie will begin with some thoughts for 2 minutes uninterrupted. I'll respond with 2 minutes uninterrupted, and we'll go back and forth in that format for about a minute each. Then we'll take about a 10-second break, or a little bit break, and then we'll just kind of have at it. And so, Dr. Ritchie, thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
You're about to be in trouble, Charlie. All right, here's the thing. Mask mandates in schools are 100% appropriate, and here's why. First of all, the vast majority of American voters actually support mask mandates for school teachers and for those who are inside of the school system. But let's look at what it actually does. A mask mandate, people that argue against it, they say this is an intrusion on civil liberties. But think about it. A dress code, is that an intrusion on civil liberty? A vaccination mandate, is that an intrusion on civil liberty? Let me bring you back to K through 12 education again. 100% of all public schools in the United States of America require vaccination to enter. That's your vaccine passport already in play. 92% of private institutions require a vaccine in order to attend. Let's go to the mask mandate. The mask mandate protocol is in place for the safety of students. This is based on verifiable science. 90% of those in the field of science, the field of study, they say that yes, it actually decreases the spread of COVID-19. But now you have people around this country, literally, rather than throwing on the mask, they rather throw fists. They're fighting school teachers. They're fighting those that oppose them, and they are threatening to fight school board members because of a mask mandate. I have not seen this kind of activity at school board meetings over anything except for these mandates. But remember, mandates are already in place. School boards have the statutory authority to implement administrative law given to them by the states based on the construct of the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. These school boards are well within their constitutional right and statutory authority in order to implement such a protocol. Just as they have the ability to say, here's the dress code, here's the vaccination requirement, here's the teacher credentialing requirement, and here's what it takes to pass to the next grade.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Ritchie. So here's how to first respond. First of all, we have to ask ourselves the question, is the Chinese coronavirus or the Fauci virus a serious threat to children? That's the first question. And so Dr. Macquarie wrote a piece, I should say, for the Wall Street Journal, where he studied tens of thousands, it was over 40,000 children with the virus, and was not able to find one child that died from the virus that did not have underlying health conditions and that did not have some sort of immunocompromised condition. And so you look even more broadly than that, and this is from the New York Times, I just want to read this, which is annual deaths among children in the United States. Now this is per 100,000 people. So children 5 to 14 years old have a 2.1 per 100,000 chance of dying from cancer, a 1.9 per 100,000 chance of dying from vehicle accidents, 1.5 per 100,000 to die from suicide. We'll get back to that in a second. 0.7 from homicide, 0.6 from cardiovascular disease, 0.5 from drowning, 0.3 from flu, and 0.2 from COVID. Now that's not percentage, that's per 100,000. So the question is, if children are at a greater risk of riding in a car to school, then why all of a sudden should we now mandate the masks for children? So I think we're talking about two different things, and I think we'll have a fun time going back and forth at the unscripted part of this is, do schools have the ability and the authority, and is it a good idea? I'm going to start with whether it's a good idea, then we can get into the other one. It's an awful idea. It's bad for interaction. It's bad for childhood development. We already see the increase in mental health issues that I will go through some of the numbers associated with that, but everyone has kind of experienced that in their own way. And saying to a child who is not at considerable risk of dying from a certain virus that you must change the way you interact, I think is child abuse. And the floor is yours.
All right, you have 1 minute, Dr.
All right, so let's talk about the numbers.
Yes.
Okay. The Delta variant has changed the game in many ways, where now you have children who not only have the virus, but they are experiencing adverse reactions from the virus like never before. I take you to a place called Jackson County, Mississippi. There's a school superintendent. This guy decided to ignore all COVID-19 protocols. He says he's going to live a life that's external of the fear of the pandemic. Well, his school system, they have a 7% COVID positive rating. They've already lost a school teacher. Here's the other dynamic that people aren't considering. You think children go to school in silos? These children who can be carriers of COVID-19 can infect their social environment, such as their parents, their grandparents, other peer groups, people that their families associate with. And then it becomes an issue of the ecosystem of our safety, not just the silo of the school system.
Very good. I will respond. So I'm glad you brought up the Delta variant. So a lot of people have done at least some initial studies of the Delta variant. So according to Dr. Roberta DeBasi of the Children's National Hospital, she was asked about Ari Shapiro from National Public Radio about the Delta variant. The National Public Radio host said, wait a second, if kids under 12 are not vaccinated, is the Delta variant a significant risk? And she said, quote, children are still somewhat between 12 to 15% of all COVID cases and still 3 to 4% of all hospitalizations. And we have not seen a huge change in that, even with the Delta variant. Now, I'll add to that where the Boston Globe, not exactly, a politicized paper to the right, asked the question, is the variant more severe in children? Dr. Sharon Doran, epidemiologist at Tufts Medical Center, says, no, I have not seen any peer-reviewed data from a reliable source to suggest that. So I would submit, doctor, that there is no data to show that Delta variant has any harsher cause. In fact, the data shows the opposite.
Let me respond, all right? So here's what we know about the Delta variant. Based on CDC directives, the Delta variant is more adversely affecting young people than it has previous with the original design. To suggest otherwise is silly, and here's why. You can go to a place like Alabama. Alabama, for the first time, they have run out of ICU beds. The Alabama leadership, governor and beyond, they have blamed this on children going to hospitals that did not go before with the original COVID virus. They're now being hospitalized like never before, and they're running out of ICU beds. And at some point this week or next week, they may run out of ICU beds. That's because of the hospitalization not only of adults, but also of children. At last count, they had over 400 children hospitalized for COVID. They had a fraction of that during the first onset of the virus.
Almost perfect timing. I got to give you credit for that. It's almost like you do radio or something. So I'll respond to this in a couple different ways, and there's a lot more to unpack once we kind of go back and forth. First, we have to ask ourselves the question, are people being hospitalized because of COVID or with COVID? Now, this is something I've been saying for quite some time, but The Atlantic, which is a publication I think we can both agree is not exactly on the right, came out with this at the end of their article. It was actually just published recently, where they asked the question, and this is the same doctor, Dr. Shara Doran, who's an epidemiologist at Tufts Medical Center from Boston, very reputable, right? So she disagrees with the CDC. She says Delta variant is not a significant risk for children, right? And we're going to talk about what do you do when you disagree, when you have competing studies? Because I think that would be an interesting discussion, where she said, quote, as we shift from cases to hospitalizations as a metric to drive policy and assess risk, we should refine the definition of hospitalization. Those patients who are there with rather than from COVID don't belong in the metric. So I would just say, doctor, when you say 400 kids are hospitalized with COVID, we don't know that's necessarily true. In fact, some say that number might be even 50 times too large. You saw you?
Okay. All right, here's the thing, Charlie, and I keep hearing people make this argument that somehow it matters that children who have an underlying health condition are the ones who are dying or being hospitalized. That doesn't matter, Charlie. The fact is that these are children, and some of these children aren't even aware if they have an underlying condition, and that's not 100% of the data. So when we continue to create this us and them narrative that somehow says, well, the only children who are dying are those that have an underlying health condition, well, hell, you can have an underlying health condition. That does not make you any less significant as it relates to a virus or the spread of a virus that's preventable. So are we having an argument about a civil liberty? Because if this is an argument about a civil liberty, then the COVID issue is a separate argument. Because you have no issue with your seatbelt mandate. You have no issue with your mandate to have a driver's license, even though you can buy a car without it. You have no issue with these other mandates, which are required for the safety of others. But you have an issue with this mandate, which we've already established that statutorily school boards have the authority to implement these mandates, and American citizens, by and large, are for the mandates in K through 12 education.
So I'll get to the civil liberties in a second. As you notice, I didn't mention it all. I'm saying this is a bad idea. Right? This is bad for children, and also it's bad for teachers, bad for an educational environment. And so I'm going to reiterate one thing. I'm not minimizing that it's children with underlying health conditions that are dying, but children with underlying health conditions have a predisposition from dying from any sort of infectious disease. And the vast majority of children in this country are healthy, which is why we frame it in that way. And so this kind of goes to this question, a couple different questions, and I would love to ask this question to you. Let's just focus on whether this is a good idea, then we could focus on whether the government has the ability. Do you think there are any downsides to children wearing masks in schools?
Hell yeah. Of course there are downsides to it. There are downsides to wearing a seatbelt. You know, a percentage of people die every year for wearing a seatbelt, but the vast majority of them have their lives saved. So let me be clear on this, Charlie.
So go ahead.
Let me be clear on this. There will always be a cause and effect relationship with any social variable change implemented in our current structural society, no matter what. Masks create changes. It is a social deviation from the norm. But when you look at the risk of a child either having severe respiratory complications forever, potentially dying, or potentially infecting their parents or grandparents, we weigh that. We weigh the same variables as it relates to vaccines that are already mandated. Brother, in the school system, the vaccines that are already mandated are very clear. Mumps,
measles, polio,
all
rubella,
of them. Every single one of them. But do you have an issue with those?
It's a totally different type of vaccine, first of all. First of all, those take 10 to 15 years on average to develop. Secondly, they've just changed the definition of a vaccine.
So you have an issue with the vaccine, not the intrusion or
well, again, we'll get to the
liberty.
civil liberty part of it, right?
Okay.
So I'm not saying that a school does not have the ability to mandate certain things. Instead, my argument is that this is detrimental to children, their development, mental health issues, their ability to interact, and it doesn't even do what you say it's going to do. So let me just read something. That a study was done about masks that shows that if the mask is even adjusted by 3.2%, it totally invalidates any sort of efficacy of a mask.
Who did that study, Charlie?
Well, this was written by Daniel Horowitz,
But
and it was
who did the
Stephen
study?
Petty, one of the most experienced certified industrial hygienists and exposure experts in the country, has a study that he did on this. So Stephen Petty, the audience can look at it, and they can have their own sort of interpretation. Now, most of the mask studies that you're probably going to mention are done in laboratory-style environments, not with 6-year-old children. And you can agree, you've seen 6-year-olds, they're moving the mask all the time, which totally negates any sort of potential benefit. So if kids aren't going to wear them properly and the cloth mask is basically a joke, then why subject them to this kind of submissive kind of cloth face diaper?
All right, so you're incorrect on the data. So let me go ahead and correct that data. First off, the data that you're citing is what we call an outlier data set.
Okay.
92% of the field of actual research scientists agree that masks decrease the spread of COVID. As a matter of fact, the only deviation from that agreement is by how much. The lowest end is 10%. The highest is 91%.
Can I ask a question about that?
I get to.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second, brother.
You got it.
All right. So University of California, they have a study, and they posted this just a few days ago. And if anybody wants to read it, it's called "Still Confused About Masks." Okay. One of the lab studies that they highlighted showed in a high-speed camera scenario, respiratory droplets. This is how the virus travels with the viral load. Those respiratory droplets were found within 20 to 500 micrometers. That's your size. They were generated from saying a simple phrase. So just talking to somebody creates a viral load 20 to 500 micrometers, right? Having a cloth in front of your mouth decreased it by virtually 100%. Now, that flies in the face of individuals who say, well, cloth masks do nothing. And remember, cloth masks are also now recommended for public use by the CDC and the World Health Organization. So when you say they do absolutely nothing, even the data that you cite that says it doesn't do as much is at 10% effectiveness. The other data, that's the majority of the data, says it does it at 80 to 90% effectiveness.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding your position. Your position is that, first of all, does that study factor in whether they wear the mask correctly or not? Whether that they're touching the mask all the time and they're moving it? Does that study factor for that?
This study factors for droplets that are
so it doesn't.
transmitted.
Okay. And that's fine.
But think about it,
But I
Charlie.
mean, a 7-year-old's not going to not touch their face and move the
brother,
mask.
think about it. Your issue, the argument you're making with me is an argument of education. That means that young people have to be more educated. I'm a former high school teacher. All right, there are high school students that may not wear the mask properly. There are grown folks that don't wear the mask properly.
Well, that's part of the argument.
The issue then is education and proper wearing of the mask. You're literally making my argument for me.
That's part of the argument. The
But
other
Charlie,
argument,
you're making my argument saying if you wear it properly, then it does in fact decrease the spread of COVID.
But they don't, and they won't, and you know that. You're dealing with 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. The other part of the argument, though, is that it actually makes us unfamiliar with one another, harder to communicate. It stunts childhood development. So I want to read some of these numbers, and I want to ask you: do you think that masking children forcibly is going to help the 90% increase in suicide that we saw through March from 2019 to 20? Is it going to help the nearly doubling of mental health issues or the 333.9% increase in intentional self-harm claim lines?
You're blaming all that on masks.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm asking you a question. Mm-hmm. Is that going to help or hurt America's mental health crisis?
Let's be very clear, brother, because I want to understand exactly what you're asking. Are you saying that a kid wearing a mask and adjusting to a new social norm yields this result?
No, I'm asking you.
No, it doesn't yield that result.
Okay.
There's nothing in the data set that says.
All right, okay, so you think that masks have no impact whatsoever, potentially in mental health.
Brother, I
or
just
in
answered that question
communication.
and told you they do have an impact, but COVID-19 has even a stronger impact
What makes you
on
say
our
that?
social development.
Because
the risk of death, brother,
is
let me
so
tell you-
low for children.
No, brother, no. Let me tell you where I come from. When we talk about children, Charlie, we're not talking about a silo of just kids in an educational system. We're talking about kids that are connected to a greater community. I come from a community where this COVID-19 virus, brother, has ravaged the black community. And it's not just because children wear masks or don't wear masks. It's because of other variables such as healthcare inequity, etc. But if you look at children and just say, well, the mask thing is the only thing. It's not just that. We don't want young kids going back to infecting parents and grandparents. And if it's such a bad idea, Charlie, are you disagreeing with over 60% of Americans who care about their children? Now, you can't say these folks don't care about their children. And they are saying in all of the survey data that we want mask mandates for our children so they can be safe. What do you say to those parents that say that?
I have a difference of opinion. And by the way, thankfully, we have a system. Just because you have 60% of opinion doesn't mean it necessarily only becomes law. We'll get to kind of I want to get to the civil
But it's
rights
already
thing
law.
in a second, but it's or it becomes precedent or gets implemented or whatever it is. So as I mentioned, the New York Times said that COVID, you have a higher chance of dying from flu and pneumonia, drowning, cardiovascular disease, suicide, homicide, vehicle accidents. So to be consistent, per 100,000 for children, right?
Okay.
Are you okay with banning driving?
So let's go to this. I'm okay with making sure kids have a set of prerequisites in order to drive. Which,
How about
by
being
the
a
way,
passenger?
Wait a minute. By the way, that's already the law. Children do not get to drive just because they turn a certain age. They have to get a learner's permit, go through a training process in order to get that license. And why do we do that, Charlie? We do that because we know that driving is dangerous. That's why we do that, right?
Well, also being a passenger in a car as well.
Well,
I'm just
everything,
saying,
brother,
to be
everything
to
to
be
some level has a
consistent,
danger, right?
If your view is to make safety a priority over liberty, then I'm just asking you, because that is really the question, right?
No.
Do you have the liberty to be as God made you without a mask, right?
God made you without clothes. You got clothes on.
Well, and we wear clothes for a reason. We know,
Well,
we know the biblical reason for that.
It's the law, and you will be charged with indecent exposure.
God also gave us a face for a reason, to be able to interact and empathize, to communicate,
Come on,
so I
man.
can see your expressions. Let me ask you a
Charlie,
question.
Charlie, come
Do you
on,
think
Charlie.
this debate would be better or worse if we had masks on?
It'll be the same for me.
Really? You think so?
Let me tell you something, brother.
That's interesting.
I teach college classes and lecture with a mask on. All of my students have masks. I go to law school. We all have masks on. My professor has a mask as well. And I've actually been in schools when schools first started back where masks were required. And let me tell you something about real teachers. School teachers are able to teach with a mask on and without a mask. It's called pedagogy. And some of the really good teachers, they're able to translate the message of the mask into their curriculum. But once again, you're avoiding something that's huge and right in our face. Is the benefit, and this is a question of what you believe, is the benefit of protecting children by saying you do have to wear a mask, you do have to abide by a dress code, you do have to abide by a particular behavioral standard. Are those directives inside of a school system to protect the overall and general safety of students? Is that a good idea? I say yes, you say no.
Well, and I think you're coming from a false premise. The data I showed is that they're not at risk and considerably from the Delta variant.
Silo thinking, brother. You're not thinking about their families
The
or
data I
communities or nothing else.
showed that they don't even wear the masks. The data I also
What percentage?
shows, well, again, 2%
What percentage
of the
of kids do not wear the mask properly?
I don't have data on that, but if you've ever been around a 6-year-old, they don't wear anything properly.
Man,
They eat dirt.
Let me tell you something, man.
Let alone wear a mask properly.
Charlie, and I mean this in all due respect. I've been inside of school systems recently that did the let's come back thing and let's wear a mask and let's socially distance. Those kids were well behaved. They did not take the mask off. They adhered to it.
Even if a 2% adjustment, doctor, 2%.
Well,
it changes everything.
Well, it changes it based on the research that I have from 90% effectiveness, and it can lower down to 10%. All right, you got a lot of wiggle room in between that. No scientist says that wearing a cloth mask is ineffective. They just argue on the effectiveness with the majority of the science and majority of the data saying it is well over 50% effective.
That's not true. There's a study out of Denmark that shows there's almost
That's just
no
one
increase.
study, brother.
So that's a good question. I'm going to get to that in a second. What happens when you have different studies? What happens when the body of evidence contradicts? Because that's an important question,
I think that's a great question.
Because how do you govern oneself when you have, I have this study, I have that study, but I just want to make sure that the people watching can see where I'm coming from my perspective. So let me just say kind of one other point on this, where you said that, am I willing to make adjustments for child safety? And you kind of asked, that was the open-ended question, where I say it's not about that at all. In fact, the downside, in my opinion, far outweighs any sort of benefit, especially when Dr. Macri, who said, he studied right here, he studied 43,000 children with COVID and was not able to find a single death. Now you say it's also a transmission issue. Dr. Macri also said that children, quote, are not significant carriers or super spreaders to adults.
Okay,
so,
wow.
So we're going to have study collision, so go ahead.
So let's talk about study collision. Once again, outlier data. What that doctor just quoted to say that children are not carriers of COVID-19 is outlier data, because over 90% of the field agrees, based on research and study, that kids are carriers of not only COVID, but of any virus. And you literally just made that argument with me. You literally just said, Charlie, that kids do not properly wear their mask and they're spreading things by not properly wearing their mask. You have made the
That was not my
contrast
argument. I said if your argument was true and masks worked, it would only be true if every child was a perfect automaton mask-wearing student, which of course we know is not true.
Do seatbelt mandates work?
Of course they do.
Does everyone wear one?
Do you know what's amazing about a seatbelt?
Charlie, does everyone wear a seatbelt?
After you're in a car accident, it doesn't give you natural immunity from getting in another car accident.
Brother,
that's what makes this totally different.
Does everyone wear a seatbelt, Charlie?
Of course not.
Do we then go back and unravel, because only 49 states have seatbelt laws, do we go back and unravel the 49 state statutes, because there are some people who will either A, not wear them, or B, actually die because of them? We don't do that, Charlie, because we see the benefit of wearing that safety belt. That protocol far outweighs anything else.
So I've not been convinced by.
And let's talk about the data. Let's talk about the data.
Because we're gonna collide on data.
Okay.
But let me ask you a question. When it comes to driving and safetyism, do you think we should bring speed limits down to 20 miles an hour, which would definitely save lives? Is that a good handoff?
Yeah, so let me get back to that. It used to be 15 miles per hour, by the way.
Is that okay with you? Because that would prioritize safety over liberty.
Well, I think you always weigh it. But let me answer your first question.
Okay.
I'll get back to that one. You talked about conflict in data, right?
Yeah, like what happens when I have a study? I have a study. What do we do?
That's right. So here's what happens. Science, a lot of people misinterpret what science is. They say science is a fact. Science is not a fact. Science is a field of study. Now, there are some things that are scientific facts, like gravity, okay? But science is a field of study. And I do think sometimes scientists do themselves an injustice when they do not describe science as such. It is a field of study. Now, what does that field of study mean? It means you study the field. So what's the field of science? All of these research surveys, these research, these laboratory experiments, these real world research experiments, that's the field of study. And so for you and I, who are reading the data from these experts, what we typically depend on is what is the majority sentiment? What is the consensus among the scientist community? And that is how we start to derive our conclusions based on the research that we're able to analyze independently as independent thinking individuals. Now, you can still believe an outlier study if you choose. It is contrary to the majority of the science that's available for review, but that is still within your right as an American, right? So that is how you do it. You're going to always have clashing opinions and conclusions, but literally in research, there's no 50-50 here. There's not 50% of the scientists are saying this and 50% of the scientists are saying that. Literally, you're giving me 7% of what scientists are saying compared to 92, 93% of what other scientists are saying. That's the argument that you're making with me, Charlie.
And I'm always fascinated by the 7% because they're willing to buck the consensus and pursue things that they have found in the scientific method to be true. And so I guess this is an important question. Then we'll get into what do we do when we have these differences, because that we're going to keep on going in circles of study versus study. And I'm going to say, well, according to this doctor, for example, as I'll say, Dr. Daron, Delta variant not severe in children. And then I'll say Dr. DeBazi said the same thing, and Dr. Macri, and you'll say, well, the CDC said this. I guess I'll ask you a question.
Which are a lot of doctors.
Well, let me ask you a question. The CDC contradicted themselves on masks. They contradicted themselves on vaccines. They contradicted themselves on COVID being on surfaces. Remember, they said it could be there up to 5 days. We know that not to be true. They contradicted themselves on almost everything. If they've been wrong on the science of 90% of doctors, why should we trust them now?
You know, that's really interesting because you trust them, don't you?
It depends on what issue.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah. So
you trust them depending on what issue. That is called confirmation bias. So Charlie,
well, it depends on the issue. If they're talking about, Newton's second law, then I'll trust them on that.
They don't talk about that. The issue with the CDC is not about you discrediting all the scientists. Now, I'll take it back to one variable you just named, the COVID, the survival time of the virus, right?
Yeah, like is COVID able to be on this table for 5 days?
Right. Initially, there were scientists that came out and said, hell, it can be up there for 18 days. Well, in certain environments it can, because that was based on a ship crew, a cruise ship, where the virus was still there after
the Princess
15
cruise
days.
ship.
That's right, brother. It was there after 15 days. Everybody was evacuated. They cleaned that ship top to bottom, and they still found active virus on the ship. So they came out and said, hey, listen, we're still learning this thing. We are connecting it to the field of study, which is called science. And we want you to be warned that we have active virus cultures still on this ship, and no one infected has been here for over 15 days. They reported that. And then people ran with it and said, oh my goodness, this thing survives for all of these days. But that was in a particular environment, and that environment was conducive to the growth and the preservation of that virus. That's context. That's important.
So you mentioned outliers. You know, those of us that are trying to answer the question, what do we do about this? I'm fascinated by outliers. Outliers in science sometimes end up being true. In fact, we've seen this. You know, we were told that it was a conspiracy theory, that it came from a lab. Well, that's kind of the prevailing wisdom now. It definitely didn't come from some bat in the Himalayas. It's looking more and more like it came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It also used to be an outlier to say that we revolve around the sun. The heliocentric theory of gravitational pull, as authored by Galileo, used to be an outlier in science. Newton's first, second, and third law, the idea that an object at rest will stay at rest, the idea that there's force equals mass times acceleration, these things had to be eventually investigated and proven. I'll give you another example. It used to be scientific consensus that eugenics was good and the sterilization of women would improve humanity. Now, those are some extreme examples.
Very
I
extreme.
understand. But the point is that sometimes what if these studies are right? Do you ever wonder, what if there's some truth here?
Do you ever wonder what if the majority of scientists are telling the truth?
Well, of course. I mean, I entertain it, and I dismiss it on issue by issue. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Like a majority of scientists right now are saying that we have to entertain another round of lockdowns in certain parts of the country or the world to try to stop the virus. I think that's a big mistake. I mean, I'll listen to anything that they say.
Well, you may think that's a big mistake, but you're saying that based on a socioeconomic factor.
Well, I also
rather
could say
than
it
a scientific
I
factor.
could also say it epidemiologically, right? So let's look at Israel and Sweden, right? Israel was held up as this beautiful country, mass inoculation. They've now gone through their fourth lockdown. They're on their fourth booster shot. Sweden, that probably had the most mature and prudent response to the virus, is wide open, and Sweden has now banned Israeli citizens from coming into Sweden. And so I don't need, a PhD in epidemiology to say, hey, whatever decisions they were making in Sweden seemed far more prudent than what they were doing in Israel. And I suppose this is the question, which is, you have this multitude of studies, many of these, the consensus that was put forward. So let's go back in time. Dr. Ronnie Jackson last year said, do not wear a mask. People, stop wearing masks. And now we're mask crazy. That was a contradiction, right? Remember, they said that at first that children might be at risk. That was a conjecture. That was not necessarily a policy. We now know it to be different. The point is that we should always be entertaining the minority opinion in science, right?
All right, brother.
And honestly, that minority opinion has ended up being true almost every time.
No, sir. No, sir. The minority opinion has said some pretty extreme things. You have a minority opinion of people who believe that the earth is still flat.
Well, I'm not one of those people.
I understand that.
I do believe in a circular earth that
All
can
right,
be proven in a variety of different ways.
But remember, you have some people that are willing to die by that sentiment. They are so dogmatic about the earth, right? And that's a scientific factor. That's earth science. Just because the data or the proclamation is an outlier does not mean it's true.
But calling Dr. Daron a flat earther is a little extreme.
That's not, come on, brother.
She's an epidemiologist at Tufts Medical Center.
You know good and damn well.
But you're
I
kind of
didn't make that
conflating those
comparison.
two things, is what I'm not
Brother,
presenting
from
flat
the
earth
extreme
evidence.
examples you just gave.
Very fair.
Come
That's
on.
fine.
Okay. Let's go to some simple things we learned about infectious diseases. Like you, I've interviewed a lot of infectious disease doctors, right? Some of them have been all across the United States, and now they're right here, or all across the globe, and now they're right here in the United States trying to fight this thing. Do you and I agree that masks decrease the spread of COVID? Do we agree on that fundamental basic premise?
It's questionable. I would only agree if it's a certain type of mask that is worn absolutely properly, that followed the exact laboratory guidelines. If and only then, I would say maybe, which almost no human being outside of a controlled, sterilized laboratory environment is wearing a mask that way.
How do you wear a mask properly?
By not touching it, not adjusting it, according to, again, Stephen Petty, one of the most certified experts in industrial hygienicist. He says that even if 2% of the mask area is open, 80% of the particles under 2.5 microns will escape.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay.
Now, what area is he talking about, Charlie?
It could be the top or the bottom of the mask.
Right.
I'm not exactly
your mouth
sure
or your nose.
the terminology.
So
but yeah.
if your mouth or your nose is exposed, then it decreases the impact of what the mask.
That's not what he said.
Okay, go ahead.
But again, I'm not.
What did he say?
I'm not
Charlie?
going to profess, to
Charlie,
be
read it
a
again,
lifelong, student of mask wearing.
But brother, read it again.
Okay, I'm going to finish it though.
Okay.
Right. 2% of the mask area open, 80% of the particles under 2.5 microns will escape.
Okay.
And he says that masks will be 100% ineffective. He says. In blocking any particles that small when the open area reaches 3.2%. And he also says that if it's even adjusted by 4%, a small adjustment, it could end it all. And also, this, you could contaminate yourself. Not to mention, Dr. Macari says that if you wear the masks, you could actually be reinfecting yourself, and it lowers oxygen levels. So there are some things to say that
that's
masks,
that's really interesting. Okay.
And I'm citing other people again.
Right, I got you.
And then we'll go into what we do about it, because I think that's interesting.
That is a Minority Report. So let me take you back to what he's referencing.
Okay.
He's referencing having the mask not covering your pie hole. All right, that's what he's referencing. The way it spreads through droplets primarily is through your mouth and through your nose. Once again, I cite the study highlighted by the University of California that found in a high-speed camera, 20 to 500 micrometers were generated from a simple phrase, hello, goodbye, good to see you, okay? That simple phrase had thousands inside of those droplets. That's your viral load. A cloth mask, not one that is required for medical personnel.
N95 or whatever.
Right, not that one. Just as a matter of fact, in the study, brother, they used a cloth towel, a wash towel, in order to show that any covering is in fact effective.
So now this is the most important question, right?
Okay.
So half the country's on your couch, half the country's on my couch. It might be less than that. According to you, it's 60%, right? So then the question is, how do we govern ourselves, right, if we have differences of opinions on things that are constantly changing and confusing? Wouldn't the right answer be allow a parent and the child to make that decision outside of what a school district might want to do against their will? Shouldn't we always resort towards parental rights in situations like this?
Let me ask you this, Charlie. Let's say we use the same standard for dress codes in school systems. That is not about what the policy is. It's about what the parent and the child wants to do. Would that be okay with you?
Well, first of all, I think that a certain level of a dress code, I think, is just actually really good for childhood development. I would argue, I'm actually very pro dress code. I would love to have kids wear shirts and ties. So I think there could be an objective argument made that they'll pay more attention. But you can't make that argument for masks. You even said there's a downside. I don't think that if all of a sudden you said, hey, the nicer you dress,
No,
the worse
man,
the environment. It's the opposite.
There is a psychological downside, and various studies prove it.
To dress like you?
No, man.
See, if if kids dress like you,
you can't dress like me, brother.
I know, but if kids dressed like you, everyone would be smarter.
So
right?
let me say this, Charlie. There are studies, and listen, man, I have a doctorate in education. There are studies that show education is not just for academic achievement. It's also for social development. And there comes a time, especially in a teenager's life, where they would like to express themselves socially through their attire. I'm actually more liberal as it relates to attire, right? I don't like dress codes as they are.
See,
but
I'm more conservative. I kind of like it.
I understand the decency
as I
structure,
wear a T-shirt,
right?
You know,
but the issue is we can't create a standard that says we're willing to put your life in danger or your child in danger because you have a personal issue with the school policy. And remember, once again, the vast majority of Americans are for the mask mandate policy.
So let's just go to this. First of all, I think it's somewhat of a red herring argument because some parents don't like to send their kids to private school because they have a dress code. So there's some choice there.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying, though, is that you support a school board coming into the school and saying every child must wear the mask. Why not make it optional? Because here's what happens, is that some parents are going to yield to my opinion. Some parents will yield to your opinion. Isn't the right decision just to let parents choose?
I think the right decision is to allow the elected representatives who were elected by those parents to enact administrative law, to make common sense policies to protect the children, and for them to listen to the science as it's collected locally. I don't believe it's the right idea to do what DeSantis has did in Florida, which is to make a mask mandate ban, which, by the way, 70% of Republicans disagree with his ban on mask mandates and defunding school systems who are in opposition to his executive action. And a judge recently ruled that Governor DeSantis, that DeSantis in Florida was without legal authority when he used an executive order to limit a governmental entity that exists by statute. If you want to start making executive orders to restrict other governmental agencies, go through statutory processes through your legislature.
So let me ask you a question. First of all, I love what DeSantis did, and I love the idea
but it's
of
illegal.
Coming in. Well, there was a judge that is rehearing. I think he actually just won on that. But I will yield to this, that there was an Iowa decision that just said where a judge said what happened in Iowa was unconstitutional. So there are a lot of rulings there. I will give you that it's an open-ended question. But what DeSantis is doing is actually the anti of mandates. He's telling every student in Florida, you have, as a taxpayer, a moral right to be able to choose. And you want to talk about local government. You're talking about local government, right? You know what the ultimate local government is? A parent and child. There's nothing more local
Well, thank
than
you
that.
for saying that, because once again, the vast majority of them are for mask mandates.
Then let them mask their kid and let the other parents not mask their kids, right?
Once again, just because their child has a mask, right? It doesn't mean the child next to them will have one. And what is COVID? What are the masks for? The mask is for the decrease, primarily for the decrease of COVID, the decrease of the spread. I want to read some stats, man, because we've been all over the place. Most Americans are for the vaccine requirement. This is a Gallup poll that came out very recently.
So you want to do vaccines? That's fine.
Okay.
Happy to go into that.
All right, let's go to vaccines quickly. 54% of Americans support vaccine requirements in workplace settings. 53% report that they're for them even if you're dining out. They want you to have a vaccine passport. 61% of Americans would like to have that for air travel. We don't have that yet. You can still travel without a vaccine
Some
card,
restaurants are starting to do it.
But I'm talking
Yeah.
about travel. For
Sure.
travel, we don't have that. Canada is implementing that in the fall.
Yes.
Other countries are going to do the same. If you're telling me that the school system, just think about this, and I'm going back to vaccines. If you're telling me that the school system has the legal authority to mandate various vaccinations, that's a needle going into the body of a child. They have the authority to mandate that, but they do not have the authority to mandate a mask. That is intellectually dishonest. Either the school board has the authority to mandate vaccines and masks, or it is all governmental intrusion.
Are you talking about measles, mumps, and rubella, or are you
Right,
talking
and
about...
some children have adverse effects of those vaccines,
I would
brother.
actually be more on parental rights to that. But I'm not going to... The courts have ruled differently. My personal right would be that children should be able to go to school without the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. That's my own personal opinion.
Are you against vaccine mandates as a principle?
It depends on what you're talking about with that,
All
right?
right,
Are you
so-
talking about the current one that's being called a vaccine with a changing definition of a vaccine,
So
right?
you have an issue with COVID?
Well,
the COVID
do I
vaccine.
have an issue with the one that was put on the marketplace without the usual 10 to 15 years of study and the peer-reviewed studies and the explosion of VAERS responses?
10 to 15 years later, you will agree with me.
Well, we'll
That's
see.
what you're saying?
I don't know. The issue here is prudence, right? Is how are we going to use practical judgment to see what's in front of us and ask ourselves the question, should we use force to all of a sudden say to a family, you know what? Doesn't matter about all these studies that may very well might be a small percentage of doctors, but you know what's so great about science? It's not an up or down vote. We don't vote on Newton's third law. So if there's not 100% consensus, it is an open question. And you have to keep on going through it in a scientific method.
Follow the data.
Well, the data can send you in different directions, as we've shown. We're asking ourselves, what do we do? So my opinion is that when things are confusing, unclear, and you have contradiction, yield to rights. Let people choose. Don't use force.
All right, man. That's a funny argument to me. Let me tell you why. There's a lot of disagreement about voting, okay? You got state legislatures. They have passed laws saying you need to do A, B, and C in order to vote. You can't vote by way of absentee without having this prerequisite. It's all over the place. There is no federal uniform to voting, right?
Well, there is some. There is the Civil Rights Act. That's not true.
Yeah, but
which
the
is very
civil,
specific.
The Voting Rights Act, I think, is what you're referring to. The Voting Rights Act was gutted by the Supreme Court a few years ago, who set it aside and said the United States Congress needs to now handle this statutorily, which is the reason why southern states like Georgia, Mississippi, and others do not have to seek pre-clearance from the Department of Justice in order to change the electorate rules in their state. Before the Supreme Court set aside the Voting Rights Act, they would have to get pre-clearance from the DOJ in order to change voting ruls in their state.
So before we get to voting, can you complete the point, though? Because you were trying to connect voting with COVID.
Texas, they passed a law. They passed this legislative standard that said constitutional carry. You're familiar with that?
Big fan of it.
All right. I'm glad you're a big fan of constitutional carry, right? Because it says you do not need a prerequisite in order to get a gun. No license, no government bureaucracy, no ID, no permit, no nothing. Constitutional carry. Because bearing arms is what? A constitutional right.
Yes.
Correct? Boom. I'm good with that. 100%. Is voting a right?
Depends on if you're a felon or not.
But it is a right, because if you're a felon, you can't have a gun either.
Yeah, that's the question, right? So like an extreme libertarian would say that we should allow felons to vote, we should allow people to vote. Voting is a right, absolutely, but it becomes not a right when it's not secure. You agree with that? You don't want to all of a sudden question your elections.
So let me now pose this to you constitutionally. You have the right to bear arms.
Yes.
That right can be limited. You have to age into that right based on the state law.
Yes.
Okay. You also can have that right taken away from you based on your criminal activity.
Felon, as we agree on.
Right?
Yep.
But you do agree it's a right.
Yes, but look, rights are conditional under the current agreement we've made with our government, where the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, there are exceptions. I think there's far too many exceptions.
But
I yield to rights most of the time.
Okay, let's yield to rights on this. And this is the point I'm making to you. If you're a big fan of constitutional carry, meaning no ID, no permit, no bureaucracy.
I think that's an oversimplification of the Texas law.
No, the Texas law says you don't need nothing. As a matter of fact,
you just said felons can't buy the guns. Then how do they know if they're a felon?
Exactly, brother.
But
exactly. That's my point. Constitutional
I
carry.
think you're misunderstanding.
Charlie, I've researched this up and down.
The Texas law.
Constitutional carry does not require a prerequisite. You can just get a gun, carry it, and no law enforcement agent can ask you for a permit. Nobody. You can walk around with your gat and nobody
I understand
can
the
ask
point you're making. You
All
say,
right.
if you want to have laissez-faire policy on guns, then why don't you want to have laissez-faire policy on voting? Is that the question you're making?
Here's the point I'm making.
I don't know how that relates to COVID. But
I'm about to help you, brother. If you believe in constitutional carry,
yes.
Why don't you believe in constitutional voting?
Well, I do, which means voter ID and securing
But no
people.
ID for guns?
You know what
No permit for guns? No ID for guns?
The problem
but
with
ID
voting,
for voting?
Let me tell you why. Voting is how we build our government.
I thought guns is how you defend your government.
It's true. That's also true, which is why we should have widespread gun ownership, and we should be able to protect ourselves against a usurpatious government. Let me build this out.
All right. And I'll finish my point. I'm going to make the connection.
I don't know how it gets to COVID, but it's interesting. Okay. But voting is how we express our values and put people in positions of power. And if there's any question in the efficacy, the integrity, the transparency, and how those elections are done, the entire system falls apart. Which is why I believe in transparent and fair elections. And this idea that Georgia somehow has oppressive voter laws, they have 18 days of early voting, way more than Delaware has. They allow Sunday voting, which is souls to the polls, which is, I'm sure, something you're very well aware with. So that's a misinterpretation of that. So I do believe in constitutional voting, which is leave it to the states. Let the states do what they want to do with voting, and that goes with gun laws as well as voter laws.
All right, so let me make the connection, okay? Constitutional carry in Texas, no ID, no permit.
Again, I think you're oversimplifying that law.
No, I'm not,
also,
brother.
let me tell you why. There are federal laws like the Brady Bill in 1986 that says that felons cannot buy weapons, that the federal agents are able to get subpoenas against weapons. You're oversimplifying it.
No, I'm not. I'm not oversimplifying the Texas law. The Texas law says we're not going to check a damn thing if you're walking around this state with a gun.
Right,
That's the Texas law.
which I have no problem with. That's a separate thing of acquiring the weapon. Right?
Now, you have no problem. Well, remember, you can purchase a gun from a private dealer without showing an ID. They don't have to require that.
So you call that the gun show loophole. That's been largely misrepresented. But
No,
let's
it's
pretend
not.
you're right.
No,
Finish
it's
the
not
argument because
misrepresented.
we have to take a 10-second break in just a second. But
All
just
right,
finish your argument.
Let me make this quick. Constitutional carry, all good. Voting is a right. Constitutional voting, wait a minute. Y'all need IDs now.
I'm big into constitutional voting.
Okay. All right. Now, here's the final point. Everything we're talking about as far as regulatory agencies, mandates for vaccines or masks or protocols for COVID-19 is derived from the Constitution. There are two dynamics that the Constitution allows.
No, I never said it was unconstitutional. It
Well,
might
wait-
be. I said it's wrong.
Wait a minute, but if
That's
you
two
believe,
different things.
listen,
There's plenty
brother,
of things that are constitutional
listen,
that are wrong.
Charlie,
not everything that is constitutional
listen to
is
my
right.
point, brother. If you believe in the Constitution, why do you dismiss Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, or the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which gives states and gives regulatory agencies and gives school boards these particular powers? These powers are expressions.
I don't.
But they're expressions of the Constitution.
No, but I say they're wrong to do it, not that they don't have a right to do it.
Okay.
That's two totally different things.
So you're making a moral argument
I have
against,
been the whole time.
against kids wearing a mask to school.
Yes, not only that, I'm making a moral argument of imposing oneself into a parent's decision to either have their child wear a mask or not. That's been my argument the whole time.
But a
I have
parent's
not made a
decision-
constitutional argument. You know why I haven't made a
Okay.
constitutional argument? It's because the courts are open on this discussion.
But the Constitution is not.
Well, again, it depends on states' constitutions, depends on precedents, courts' decisions.
You know the law of
And-
reciprocation.
But hold on a
brother.
second.
State cannot override.
Courts
the
change
US
their minds all the
Constitution.
time. We had Dred Scott, praise God, we reversed that. We had the forced sterilization of women in the 1920s, praise God, we reversed that. We had Jim Crow, praise God, we reversed that.
Right, but that wasn't in the Constitution.
Well, some people said,
Jim Crow was not in the Constitution.
Well, but
now
they used the 10th Amendment to justify it, though.
Well, they used the states' rights clause.
Right, which is your argument right now in a bizarre way.
No.
Yeah.
They used a states' rights clause and perverted the statute. So we've always had those who mishandled statutory legislation. That's something commonplace.
No, I'm making a moral argument. I had the whole
get it.
time. And an argument about childhood development.
I get it. But Charlie, you're literally disagreeing with the damn parents. The data shows
No, I'm
that
not.
over 60% of the
But
parents
what about the
are for
40%?
it.
So you are, let me just make sure I'm clear. We have to take a 10-second break.
Okay.
You are okay with saying the 60% of parents can use force against 40% of parents?
They can use a mandate, yes. They can use a mandate for vaccines.
So
they can use a mandate for dress codes. They can use a mandate for that.
So let me ask you this question.
Okay.
If 60% of Americans wanted to take rights away from black Americans, is that okay?
That's a dumbass argument.
Why?
And let me tell you why.
Because that's the argument they used to make for Jim Crow.
Sir,
is a democratic
and
argument.
it was an evil argument back then.
I agree.
And let me be clear. We're talking about the safety of children and mask mandates inside of a local school system that the majority of taxpaying Americans actually agree with.
So
you're in the minority here.
We have clarity. I don't believe just because a majority of people believe something, they should
Neither
be able
do
to punish
I,
the
but
other side.
on this case, I'm with them.
I want to give you this opportunity just to kind of make your closing argument and kind of summarize it all together.
Man, let me say this, brother. I don't want to make a closing argument to argue with you.
Whatever, just
I want to say this to you. You are a brilliant mind.
Thank you.
What
Likewise.
you're doing here, thank you. What you're doing here is going to provide clarity. We don't have to agree. The push and pull of the republic or the democracy, whatever you want to call it, all right, is based on open, free, transparent, and authentic dialogue. And even though I disagree with you about 90% of the time, You are authentic in what you believe, and brother, I go to war for you any day.
Oh, well, thank you. And this sort of discussion is exactly what makes America special, and to be able to disagree and still figure out kind of what we're doing. So we're going to take it. If you guys want to watch the rest of this Charlie Kirk Show podcast, hit subscribe on the Turning Point USA feed. That's it for today. Go to the Charlie Kirk Show, and we're going to be back with more.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country is very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for drive, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
Oh, there we go. Hey, there we go, Sam.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
There you go. Welcome to Benny on the Border. There we go. Do you want to know about open borders today? We got you. This is your difference. This is what Trump built. And then we swing around here. This is what Biden's building. Little sheds. Little shanty sheds. Welcome stations. Who do you trust? The people who have lied to you for the last 100 years in your political establishment? Or your own two eyes that God gave you? Boom! There it is. Your open border.
The border is secure. The border is closed.
It's wide open right now. It's wide open.
You don't even have to sneak. You just walk.
Welcome to the southern border, the border of the United States and Mexico. This is a special edition of Benny on the Border. We've changed the name of the show because we are in crisis. This country is in crisis. I currently stand on top of a pile of unbuilt wall. Good, solid steel wall sitting rotting in the desert. Today, you are going to see a show that shocks you. You are going to see a show that absolutely exposes the corruption and the cruelty of the people in charge of this country. The political establishment that wants you less safe. We will show you with your own two eyes how they are making sure that your country is less safe. Your neighborhood, your life, your children at risk, and creating a modern day slave state inside of America. Their cruelty knows no bounds. Get ready for this episode of Benny on the Border.
We're going to build the wall. It's going to be built.
Donald Trump's wall. President Trump, here it is. This is what it looks like. Look at this. Just a pile of rusting wall. This wall could have been put up in a month and closed down this entire section of the border to human traffickers and smugglers. The size of this thing. You got it sitting here, rusting in the desert. Mexico is right over there, and here's multi-millions of dollars of wall rusting in the desert. Why? Because we didn't have the money? Because we didn't have the manpower? No, Sam. No. Because when Joe Biden became president, he told men who were working here on this site to stop. They sat in trailers and got paid by our federal government and our tax dollars to do nothing, to not build this wall. All of the material is here. You can see it with your own 2 eyeballs. Do you have eyes to see? Come and see. Look at this. You have miles of fence sitting here. This is miles. They're like 5 rows deep, straight down the corridor. Miles, miles, miles of fence. That works. You can see it up, rotting. They had the manpower, they had the contracts in place, they had the people, and now look, Sam, there you go. There's your border. You ever seen anything like it? Look at that. There is your open border, libs. There's no open border, they say. Who do you trust? The people who have lied to you for the last 100 years in your political establishment? Or your own 2 eyes that God gave you? Boom! There it is, your open border.
There will not be another foot of wall constructed on my administration.
Okay, explain, what is this structure?
So we affectionately call these the bus stops, and a lot of people that will come across during the day will actually come over here, wait in the shade. There's water always here for the people that are coming across, and then this is where they'll discard their debris. They're processed. You'll see the plastic processing bags down below where they'll fill out their paperwork. Then that is returned to them. They hop into the bus, they're taken up to sector headquarters where they're continued to be processed.
Well, it's time for the Biden administration to act. The drugs and crime that we're seeing rising in our states and flooding over the border is infecting our schools and neighborhoods.
Sam, instead of building the wall, the Biden administration has built the Welcome Center for illegal migrant smuggling and cartels. Look at this. Lecterns to process your paperwork. Water for the trip. Here are some pesos on top of the water bottle. Top of the water jug here. We got pesos left. Little thank you. Piles of trash. Piles of trash. Children's blankets. I mean, it's a Disney blanket, right? It's dystopian. You got a Disney blanket here from a kid. Who knows where this kid's from? Has this kid been sold by his parents? Who knows? There's their Disney blanket coming to America.
All alone, 5 undocumented girls from Honduras and Guatemala discovered by a Texas farmer who gave them water and food in the sweltering heat.
Come across, they wait right here till they're processed. Border Patrol will show up with a bus 2 or 3 times during the day. In the hottest parts of the year, like right now, they're waiting till about 11 o'clock at night. So between 11 and 2, they'll come across. They'll again wait in these areas unless they're trying to run away. And that's what they estimate to be about 5 to 10% of the actual traffic is running away.
So 10% of the 1.4 million, 10% on top of that.
Yes. That's their best guess, and that's just looking at the footprints, trying to establish how many people were in that group. All of this ground, they'll drag it 2 or 3 times a day so that they can look at the trafficking coming across. They're running cameras, and then they've got the ground sensors. So you may not necessarily see a truck, but then there's always eyes on this area.
Democrats just wouldn't do it. So now we have a world-class security system at the border, including the highest technology.
Sam, come here with me. Look at this. Look at how effective this wall. Here is the correctly installed wall, yes? John? Yes. This is the Johnny Yuma says this is correctly installed wall. Here's what you have. This is what the wall was supposed to look like. Not rotting in the desert, upright. The wall is in cement. It's deep down into the ground. It's hard as a rock. Sucker is tall, 30 feet plus. There's no way over that. I mean, there's no way over that. Maybe you could get some type of sophisticated contraption, but you ain't getting over that en masse. And this thing's gonna stop you. Look at this thing. When effectively installed, this is your deterrent, Sam. This is it. This is the wall.
Place like this anywhere. There's no place has anything like this or even close to it.
This is your difference. This is what Trump built. And then we swing around here. This is what Biden's building. Little sheds. Little shanty sheds. Welcome stations.
A border town in Arizona is seeing the cost of the migrant surge firsthand. The mayor has to use city funds to provide aid and COVID tests to these migrants.
The COVID protocols right here. In case you were wondering, all that stuff it's total right-wing fake news, right? Totally COVID safe down here on the border. There's a bottle of Purell sitting on top of the station to fill out your paperwork inside of the Biden Welcome Center. The Biden Welcome Center, totally COVID safe, all right? Definitely COVID safe.
To the border crisis now and some staggering numbers. More than 212,000 times Border Patrol agents stopped migrants at the southern border just last month. That's a 21-year high.
We've got some action right here.
Oh, there we go. Hey, there we go, Sam.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
There you go. Welcome to Benny on the Border. There we go. Do you want to know about open borders today? We got you. We've been out here for 10 minutes. And here we have a large group, 25 young migrants who just went running for the border. Little kids.
What's your reaction to the images here of the southern border? Get it under control. Get it under control, or you have it under control? We will get it under control.
You want to see what's really happening on your border, Sam? Here we are. How young are these kids? I got a 1-year-old. I think you got some 4-year-olds in there. We're just standing here and they go bolting through the opening on the border. There we go. You want to see the true human crisis, you have it there. Little children, little kids. The middle of the day, it's hot as blazes out here, and they are just running across the border. One border security guard here to stop. This is the absolute state of open borders at your border. This is what open borders looks like. This is what President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have done to the security in our country. This is human, the human cost. Johnny Yuma, what is behind us?
So this is an old Kentucky Fried Chicken, but the cartels took advantage of the opportunity of a thriving establishment and decided to create an underground tunneling system. So they came in here and excavated down about 40 feet, went underneath.
Hey, it's Benny Johnson here, Turning Point USA's Chief Creative Officer. If you like this video you just watched, be sure to subscribe to the official Turning Point USA channel and never miss an episode. See you guys next week.
Critical race theory is the most racist thing that is being spread in popular life in America.
Critical race theory is bigoted. It is a lie.
Racism is now being taught to our kids.
Dividing kids based on race, trying to say some are oppressors and some are oppressed is absolutely unacceptable.
CRT is racist. It is abusive. It discriminates against one's color.
It's not critical race theory. It's racism.
Conservatives! Politics is now on TPUSA Live. It'll be here every day in case you want to hear me out along with the rest of the Turning Point USA team. Don't miss out on all the conservative.
We meet this year in a moment of intermingled with great pain. We've lost so much in this devastating pandemic and global COVID response. vaccinating the world and building back better.
I'm so damn confused. What's going on, America? I am Graham Allen, and welcome to the newest episode of Real America.
I'm so excited.
I didn't think that we were going to do this, but it has to be addressed. I didn't personally watch the Emmys, but here's some of the highlights.
Yes, I am the winner. Kate Winslet.
You feel my every need. I watch you so much, I forgot how to read. That's right, what you're looking at are the elites, the highest of the high in our society, in an environment in LA County where they're not wearing masks, which the current law in LA County states that you're supposed to wear a mask at all times, whether indoor, outdoor, breathing, sleeping, whatever it may be. But at the Emmys, Seth Rogen, of all people, had this to say about what he saw going on.
There is way too many of us in this little room. He said this was outdoors. It's not!
But rest assured, fact checkers have come to the defense of the Hollywood elite, saying that it is in fact not hypocrisy because in LA County, there is an exception to TV, film, actors, saying that they are exempt from this, and because these people were at the Emmys and the Emmys were being filmed, they were performers and so therefore are magically not able to spread the virus.
That don't make no sense.
That's right. While these people do whatever they say, your children are having to deal with this.
You gotta wear it on, honey. No, you gotta keep it on.
Of all the COVID-19 talk, Tucker Carlson said it best just the other night where he said and brought to attention the fact our military readiness is now being threatened over the choice and the freedom being taken away over this COVID-19 mandate to get the vaccine. Here's a clip of that.
As of tonight, we're hearing that hundreds of Navy SEALs face being fired imminently for refusing to take the shot. Now keep in mind, there are only about 2,500-ish active duty Navy SEALs. Each one of them costs at least $500,000 for the US government to train. So imagine the effect on our country's military readiness of this. It's horrifying.
We went from a year ago with our military, our police, our nurses, our frontline workers being the bravest of the brave, to now we're just going to fire them and literally weaken every aspect of everything we have, from the military to the medical field to law enforcement to first responders. Where does it end? I'll tell you where Lord Fauci wants it to end. He says it right here.
We've got to get them vaccinated, and hopefully they will do it willingly. If not, there will have to be things that will essentially put pressure on them, such as you're not going to work in this particular agency or institution. You're not going to be able to go to this college or this university unless, in fact, you get vaccinated.
That's right, America. They want you to do exactly what they want you to do. And if you don't, they're going to make your life awfully miserable.
We can do it the easy way or the hard way. So the choice is yours, right?
It's not unknown. Joe Biden has a problem with taking questions from the press. But it was quite weird the other day when Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister from the UK, literally another world leader, is talking, and in the middle of talking, the staff at the White House just decides interview's over. See it here.
Interrupts or unbalances the Belfast Good Friday Accords. That's the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. That's the.
But rest assured, Raggedy Ann Jen Psaki comes to the defense, saying that it is actually Boris Johnson's fault that happened and not the White House's, because he didn't give them advance notice that he was going to open it up for questioning. Don't believe me? Here we go.
I think our relationship with the United Kingdom and with Prime Minister Johnson is so strong and abiding, we will be able to move forward beyond this. But he called on individuals from his press corps without alerting us to that intention in advance.
Another world leader did not let you know that he was going to take questions from his own reporters. No, what really happened was the staff at the White House doesn't want Joe Biden going off topic. They don't want him answering questions. And why would they? Because Joe Biden is proving at his United Nations speech that he's coming out firing on all cylinders. This is really painful to watch, but here you go.
We meet this year in a moment of intermingled with great pain. We've lost so much to this devastating pandemic, the emergence of new technologies, and global health and a global health threat council toward global COVID response, the global COVID response, vaccinating the world and building back better from the borderless climate crisis, from the United States and from other donors.
And while all this is going on, we have a legitimate issue of an invasion. It's not a crisis, it is an invasion at our southern border. What's weird is the United States has extended its restriction between the United States and Canada's border, but not the southern border. Why? You have to ask yourself these questions. Well, Peter Doocy does ask this question, and Raggedy Ann's at it again with this response.
If somebody walks into the country, right across the river, does somebody ask them to see their vaccination card?
Well, let me explain to you again, Peter, how our process works. As individuals come across the border, and they are both assessed for whether they have any symptoms. If they have symptoms, the intention is for them to be quarantined. That is our process. They're not intending to stay here for a lengthy period of time. I don't think it's the same.
I'm pretty sure the entire point of these people coming here is they have no intentions of leaving. Why would they be coming here? What a stupid thing to say. And these are the people that we look to give us answers about anything that's going on. The people that fly here that actually have to adhere to these unconstitutional mandates, they literally are not staying long because they're visiting and then they're going home. Am I getting through to you at all? The craziness that is going on. I'm not even going to get into Joy Reid being a blatant racist.
Missing white woman syndrome.
Because we simply just don't have enough time. That's all we have for this episode of Real America. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to check us out on Facebook and YouTube. And as always, I'm Graham Allen. And for those who can't, I'll say it for you.
Hey everyone, John Root here. Hope you really enjoyed Debate Night with Charlie Kirk. But coming up next, we have Politics with Alex Clark. She'll be sharing Uma Thurman's deepest, darkest secret. She's also going to be covering Halloween costumes. I can't believe it's only a month away. She's going to be sharing her costume ideas, and she wants some ideas from you. She'll also do a pop culture rewind and so much more. Next on Politics with Alex Clark.
When your doctor asks if you're sexually active?
Yep, she definitely won that game. I told you there would be a Britney doc on Netflix by the end of the month. There is. We're also getting 2 other shows on streaming you're gonna lose your mind over. A lot of TV news today. Uma Thurman revealed that her darkest secret is that she had an abortion. All the pop culture inspired costumes you could be for Halloween this year, and then we will take a step back in time and see what happened this week and last week in pop culture history. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Politics. Not to brag, but I almost always get it right, and this story is no different. A few weeks ago on my personal Instagram story, @RealAlexClark, I told you I thought there would be a Britney Spears Netflix documentary before the end of September. Most people did not believe me. Today, I have been vindicated because we are getting one September 28th.
Hi, my name is Britney Spears. I called you earlier, but I'm calling again because I just wanted to make sure you're in the process of ending the conservatorship.
Okay, I guess a little humble brag never hurt anyone. It's almost like I spoke this into existence for y'all. You're welcome. The next time you want the streamer gods, not you, Zuck, to give you a doc the world needs, just let me know.
No.
Anyway, it's called Britney versus Spears. Amazing title, right? And Elle magazine is reporting that the Netflix doc will be directed by true crime filmmaker Erin Lee Carr. You don't know who she is, but you do know one of her other documentaries, I Love You Now Die. Britney versus Spears has been in the works for over a year, longer than its Hulu predecessor, but it will soon be available to stream, promising another look at the unusual and constricting legal arrangement that has kept Britney's father, Jamie Spears, in control of her estate since her public breakdown in 2008.
I like European, you know, real sophisticated types. Like Britney Spears.
I feel like the Hulu doc left me wanting so much more from this story, plus so much has unfolded since that premiered, so if anyone is to be trusted to distribute a documentary, I think Netflix is the place. Let me know in the comments which Netflix documentary is your absolute favorite. Doesn't have to be about a pop star. Blackfish comes to mind for me, except it had the opposite effect. Now, I'm not terrified of aquariums or hate aquariums, I'm actually terrified of those killer whales.
FBI, huh? Excuse me. All right, they're on to us. Get them back to SeaWorld.
As if that isn't exciting enough, there's another show coming to a TV near you that we can all be thrilled about. Kathryn Hahn is going to play comic genius Joan Rivers in a new series called The Comeback Girl on Showtime. Joan basically invented the infamous red carpet line, "Who are you wearing?" Which I love because #fashion, but also modern feminists hate hearing that question. They think that women need to be asked serious intellectual questions, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you're wearing a ball gown walking down Hollywood Boulevard toward a mall, hoping that maybe you'll receive a little golden naked man named Oscar at the end of the night. We want to know about the dress. We don't care what you think about the environment when you just showed up in a bourbon. Joan was obviously controversial, but she told it like it was. And she asked the questions normal women everywhere still want to know. What are you wearing? AKA, where did you get that top?
What the hell is that?
A dress.
Says who?
Calvin Klein.
And do we have any Pitch Perfect fans in the house? Aka awesome! Because soon we're getting a spin-off series from that movie on Peacock. TV Line is reporting Adam Devine may not have appeared in the third Pitch Perfect movie, but his character's journey is apparently far from over. The actor is set to reprise the role of Bumper Allen for a Pitch Perfect spin-off series. The new project picks up several years after we last saw Bumper in 2015's Pitch Perfect 2. He's now attempting to restart his music career in Germany, where one of his songs has inexplicably become a hit.
I have notes.
I have to know, which of these are you the most excited for? The Britney doc, Joan Rivers series, or the Pitch Perfect spin-off?
Why don't you wear lipstick? Pucker. Oh, this is just, you look fabulous. Look at you. And a little more on the cheeks. And a little more on my cheeks.
Actress Uma Thurman has revealed a big secret, not just any secret, but her darkest.
So do you think there's something to say?
In an essay for the Washington Post criticizing the new Texas abortion law, Uma Thurman says she once got an abortion in her late teens. She wrote, "It has been my darkest secret until now."
Is it secret? Is it safe?
She wrote that when she found out she was pregnant at 15, she had just started her acting career and was living out of a suitcase in Europe far away from her family. She said she wanted to keep the baby, but after discussions with her family, it was decided that it would be the right choice to have an abortion. Uma said this was for a number of reasons, including not being able to give the baby a stable home at that time in her life. However, it created a lot of emotional pain, she said, for her to go through.
You and I have unfinished business.
She said, "The abortion I had as a teenager was the hardest decision of my life, one that caused me anguish then and that saddens me even now. But it was the path to the life full of joy and love that I have experienced. Choosing not to keep that early pregnancy allowed me to grow up and become the mother I wanted and needed to be." What's really sad is that Uma could have had that baby or placed it for adoption and still experienced love and joy. You never need to kill another human being to achieve that.
Hi, Mom!
I know she wrote this letter to speak out against the new Texas law, but if abortion was truly the morally right decision, why would it be a dark secret? Why would it cause her sadness even now? Sure, Uma Thurman is rich and famous and she has a family now, but deep down, she clearly knows, whether she admits it or not, that that abortion was not the morally right thing to do. My hope is that women who read this letter take away the truth of her story rather than the intent behind the letter. I hope it helps them realize that abortion is never a simple solution and it's not healthcare. It's an abundantly painful act with invisible scars that never fade with time. No one should ever be shamed for making this decision, but all women should know that by choosing life, they choose all the wonderful, even if difficult, aspects that come with life too.
I smell like beef. I smell like beef.
Some of you may know this, but if not, Uma's daughter, Maya Hawke, actually appeared in Stranger Things and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Something Planned Parenthood never tells you prior to an abortion is that the life in question is just that, a life full of interests, talents, personality, and dreams. Maya looks so much like her mom, and she's an actress like her too. You've just got to wonder what that other life would have been like, you know? Uma, this doesn't mean that you can't change your stance now. If you truly feel heartbroken on what you had to go through, tell your story. Show other women that if they go through with an abortion, it will actually haunt them the rest of their lives.
Oh, hell no, I'm out.
We're almost a month out from Halloween. Can you believe it? My favorite holiday. Me so excited!
Well, if you want to be scary, you're gonna need a good costume.
And because you're gonna need a good costume, I already started thinking of some good pop culture inspired ones that you could do this year. I feel like Kim Kardashian's Met Gala outfit is an easy option. I mean, she's literally a Dementor from Harry Potter. Except, instead of eating the happiness of wizard students or whatever, she eats designer brand salads.
Guess what?
Now, if you need a BFF costume, someone has got to be Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie from the Simple Life cover, you know, with the overalls and the pitchfork.
Girls, come here, please!
Ted Lasso, easy. Get a mustache, a slinky workout jacket, and a visor. Yay, sports!
Speaking as we were mere moments ago about time, I unfortunately don't have any. I have a branding meeting.
Oh, I always feel so bad for the cows, but you gotta do it, otherwise they get lost.
Ooh, or you could be Olivia Rodrigo's sticker face from her Sour album. You're welcome for that idea. Don't give away what you're going as this year yet because we don't want copycats, but share in the comments your most creative costume idea from years past.
What do you think of this? You like it?
You know, I had never even seen Beetlejuice until the other night. I watched it for the first time with Nick. To be honest, I didn't love it, but I did appreciate it from an art standpoint, I suppose. To me, the best Halloween movie is Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Cinematic masterpiece. Chef's kiss.
Watch me swing right in.
Every Thursday, we step into my hot pink time machine, and since we did a bunch of Evergreen episodes last week, well, my editor took a vacation without me, you get some special bonus stories from this week and last. By the way, since we're smack dab in the middle of TV season, this is a very TV-heavy segment, so here is your Pop Culture Rewind. In 1969, one of my fave Baby Murderino cartoons was born. The OG, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?
Where are you? We got some work to do.
In 1981, conservative Sandra Day O'Connor was sworn in as the first woman to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. How iconic is this pink and purple outfit? OG Elle Woods.
In the area of abortion is that I am opposed to it as a matter of birth control or otherwise. The subject of abortion is a valid one in my view for legislative action. Subject to any constitutional restraints or limitations.
This week in 1987, Full House premiered on ABC. Back when San Francisco didn't smell like poop.
Blue, 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 blue.
1994, we got Friends, a show I hate, but many of you love. Here's a juicy one. Last week in 1996, the O.J. Simpson civil trial began.
This whole thing is making my head hurt. I don't want to think about it. Wear your mask.
In 1999, this week, Law & Order SVU debuted on NBC. I still watch the show on Hulu, one of my other favorites. And in 2009, Modern Family premiered on ABC as well. And that's what happened this week and last in pop culture history. funny, you little minx. Tonight at midnight Eastern, which means 9 p.m. Pacific, lucky for the West Coast peeps, you get a brand new episode of The Spillover. To find out who the special guest is, prepare for the announcement at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific tonight on Politics Instagram. Make sure you take a pic of yourself listening to it in the car, screenshot it, share it to your stories, tell everyone about my totally awesome, totally life-changing, skin-clearing podcast. Then subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and leave a 5-star review if you like the show. And by the way, if you want to, you can watch the show every Friday on TPUSA Live or the Politics YouTube channel. As for Politics, this is the bread and butter show, the show that made the spillover even possible. Before you go anywhere today, tap the heart, tell us the most creative Halloween costume you've ever had and which of those new shows you're the most excited for. Share this episode with your friends, and if you hit the save button, it may be the most important thing you can do to help us, so do that. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. It's pop culture without the propaganda every single day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Politics. Support Politics, the first ever conservative pop culture daily show, by subscribing to our channel, turning on notifications, and of course, hitting the thumbs up. Also, our main home is on Instagram. Seriously, just trust me, that's where the real magic happens. Follow us there.